It's 6 o'clock, and I will call this August 8th, 2022 meeting of the Chelmsford Select Board to order. Would you please join me in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
It's so nice to have so much energy in the room.
You can say that.
So first up, we have our public service announcements, and I'll let George do the first one.
I'd like to call up Adam McCusker, Coach Adam McCusker of the eight-year-old and under Cal Ripken New England champs representing Chelmsford, Mass. And we're all very proud of them. And Adam's going to tell us about they're going to New Jersey, playing for the national championships. And he's going to maybe introduce some of the kids, all the kids, I hope. So,
We're missing a couple, but that's all right. Thank you.
go ahead.
Thank you guys for having us. Really appreciate it. These guys worked extremely hard this year. They came, first time we played together. So 8 years old, we started out, when we started, right after the season, Coach, June. And we've pretty much been playing a lot of baseball since. Some of the parents are happy, some might not be so happy about all that baseball, but we started off in the districts. We won the districts, then we went to the states, we got the bid to the regionals, and we ended up coming back in the semifinals from 10-2 down to win it. They were starting to call the cardiac kids. That's what they were starting to get called. So we really appreciate you guys having us tonight and honoring us. And these guys are going to be ready to play. We're leaving next Sunday. Going to be down there the 14th to hopefully the 23rd, because the championship game is the 22nd. So we hopefully will win that whole thing. So I'm going to just call you guys. You guys are going to stand up. Everyone's going to give you a little clap, all right? First up, Cam Bishop, number 1. Number 12, Colton Blasioli. Number 24, Cam Costello. Number 22, Nate Howarth. You guys can tip your caps. You guys when you get up. Number 6, Rowan Ingalls. Letting the hair go, I like it. Billy Marcotte, number 34. Owen McCusker, number 2. Number 5, Cam Moran. Number 9, Wyatt Poison. Number 7, Brent Reddy. And we have number 11, Mike Betancourt, and number 17, Ryan Rossetti. They're on the beach right now, so couldn't make it back. Getting ready for the World Series, so. We thank you guys very much for having us. We're excited to head down there and hopefully bring back the championship.
Well, thank you for coaching the kids and the rest of the coaches and the parents and everything for great tribute.
Good luck.
We
You guys,
have,
the community's very proud.
Couple of coaches too. Nick Blasioli, stand up. Dave Bishop, stand up. And we also have Steve Betancourt and Steve Rossetti. He's kind of a liaison, so we'll give you a little credit too. Good luck.
Good luck and have fun.
Thank you.
And we have a fundraiser for our team at the Brick House.
They can't hear you unless you're at the mic.
We have a little fundraiser going on at the Brick House. Thank you, Brick House Pizza, for us to go over there and celebrate, and the proceeds go. You mind if we head out?
Oh, go ahead.
Absolutely.
Thank you guys.
There you go.
Appreciate it.
Tell them to save some for us a little bit.
Congratulations.
You guys don't want to stay for the
But it is better than I expected. Luck.
Good luck, guys. Good luck, folks. Good luck.
I know.
A few of them would.
Okay, we want to continue with the public service announcements, Ken?
Sure. So the first one up, we have the Military Appreciation Cookout. The Chelmsford Military Community Covenant Task Force invites the community to attend the cookout. Please join us to show your support for our local veterans and military for their service and sacrifice. It will be held Tuesday, August 9th, so that's tomorrow, from 5 to 7 p.m. at the Chelmsford Lodge of Elks Pavilion on 300 Littleton Road here in Chelmsford. It's free to all. They'll be serving hamburgers, hot dogs, watermelon, desserts, soft drinks, and there'll be a cash bar for those who wish to partake. Our next public service announcement is a Chelmsford Public Information Meeting for the replacement of 2 bridges. So what's going on? A live virtual public information meeting will be hosted by the Mass DOT website to present an overview of the forthcoming project to replace the 2 bridges carrying Gorham Street and Westford Street over 495. The proposed designs for Gorham Street will have 2 travel lanes, 1 in each direction, shoulder, bike lanes with buffers and sidewalks on both sides. It's the same plan actually for both streets. So Westford Street will also have the same 2 travel lanes, 1 in each direction, shoulder, bike lanes, sidewalks on both sides. You can find the link to attend the meeting. It's on Wednesday, August 10th at 6 p.m. at the Mass DOT. It's mass.gov/MassDOT, and there's a calendar of hearings on there that you can go to. Or if you come to tonight's meeting at Chelmsford, Town of Chelmsford, in link on our agenda, there's a link in the agenda that you'll see in one of the attachments. I think that's the easiest way instead of reading the website. Our next public announcement is Choose Chelmsford Age-Friendly Job Fair. So if you're seeking a full-time or part-time job, this is the job fair for you. Thursday, August 18th. It's 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. at 75 Groton Road here in Chelmsford. You can meet with employers that are age-friendly and value a multi-generational workforce. For anyone 50-plus, you'll have priority access from 10 to 11 a.m., open to everyone at 11 a.m., and runs again till 1 o'clock. You can register at masshirelowellcc.com/CC Job Fair. For more information, you can contact Rena Sigul at 978-805-4702. Next up, Chelmsford Health Department presents the Fall Festival, which will be Saturday, October 1st this year, 12 to 4 p.m., Chelmsford Centertown Common. They're going to have a touch-a-truck contest, pumpkin decorating, fun games to play. Get active and get into the autumn spirit at this family-friendly community event. Bring a non-perishable food donation for the Chelmsford Food Pantry to be entered into a raffle. Next up, we have Save the Date. This is for September 10th, 2022, from 3 to 8 p.m. for Chelmsford's first annual Soberfest. Chelmsford's Health Department overdose vigil to follow at dusk. So we want to break the stigma behind mental illness and addiction. So we want everybody to come turn out. And if you have any questions, you can contact Brittany Ginberg's. Her email is bginberg@thepinccloudconnect.org. And our last one is the League of Women Voters. The League of Women Voters Democratic Primary 2022 Candidate Forum for Governor's Council District 3 Councilor will be held Thursday, August 25th at 6 p.m. You can also view it, and it will be recorded for the local TV station cable access. And you'll be able to submit any questions beforehand at gcd3questions@gmail.com. That's gcd3questions@gmail.com. And you'll be able to ask those questions through that link.
Thank you, Ken. Next up, we have public input. Is there anyone who would like to speak during public input? Not yet, May. In the Zoom room, we have Regina.
Yes.
We just remember we need your name and address for the record, please.
Oh, yes, thank you very much. My name is Regina Jackson. I live at 9 Essex Place, Chelmsford, Mass. And I would like to just to give my input at this time. I'm here to give my input on agenda item number 10, which is the annual performance appraisal and fiscal year compensation for Town Manager Paul Cohen. On July 25th, the Select Board presented their proposed evaluation rating for Town Manager Paul Cohen's past year's performance. Two board members, a Select Board member Ken Lefebvre and Select Board member George Dixon, submitted very low ratings, which seem unjustifiable and devoid of any factual basis. Town Manager Paul Cohen submitted a statement July 25th, 2022, requesting the unsubstantiated and unwarranted content be removed from the document. I'm not going to go into any of that statement or the evaluations. Please, everybody can read this for themselves. It's all part of the public record and it's all part of tonight's package. The response from the Select Board members Lefebvre and Dixon are in the packet tonight as well, because they are public record. Select Board Dixon's response did not add any factual basis or justification for the extremely low ratings. Select Board member Lefebvre's response also did not, in my opinion, add any facts or substance or, quite frankly, reasonable justification for such a low rating. And please go to the packet and read the response. But most troubling to me was the response from Select Board member Lefebvre stating, quote, "I have been told countless times by the public that they are scared of town hall." To me, that was clearly an incendiary statement meant to gaslight the public on Town Manager Paul Cohen's performance. It was, in my opinion, it is just malarkey. And to put that out there to suggest that people are afraid to come to town hall is very, very unprofessional. In my opinion, as someone who has followed Chelmsford town governance for over 28 years, this all relates back to the ongoing union contract dispute between the police union, the union of 7 members headed by Sergeant Frank Good. Select Board members Dixon and Lefebvre are acquaintances and friends of Sergeant Good. Select Board member Lefebvre's son.
1 minute, Regina.
Yes, I'll finish. Patrol Officer Lefebvre works under Sergeant Good at the Chelmsford Police Department. Sergeant Good has stated in public numerous times his goal is to get Town Manager Paul Cohen fired. He hasn't stated it's to sell the contract. He has stated in public that he wants to get rid of Town Manager Paul Cohen. This is the personal vendetta, and I feel Select Board members Lefebvre and Dixon are enabling it. I only ask the Select Board members Lefebvre and Dixon for better. Chelmsford needs better from you. Chelmsford deserves better from you. Thank you very much, and thank you for taking my input. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Regina. We can wait till that agenda item. Lori Pellegrino.
Good evening.
And we just need your name and address for the record, please.
Sure. Yep. It's Laurie Mary Pellegrino, 8 Sunrise Avenue in Chelmsford, Mass. So I'm here this evening in regards to topic number 9 on the agenda, the water district, the outreach to the water district regarding the issue with fire hydrants. On the morning of July 5th of this year, my family experienced a significant shed fire in our backyard at approximately 12:40 a.m. My husband woke up, noticed that we had a shed fire, immediately called 911, and within 6 minutes, Chelmsford Fire Department and Chelmsford Police Department responded. They were on the scene. I had immediately identified the contents of the shed. There were 2 full propane tanks. There were items that contained gasoline in there, a full house generator, a ride-on mower, lawnmower, all of that stuff. Excuse me. Chelmsford Fire Department brought water to the scene, thankfully, because the hydrant immediately in front of my house failed. They then attempted to utilize the hydrant that's located on Eclipse Avenue. That also failed as a result of the failure on Sunrise. Third hydrant worked, but water pressure was miserable. By that time, the Chelmsford Fire Department had knocked out the fire. They were controlling hot spots. To do that, they were also utilizing our garden hose, and because of the issues with the hydrants, they were also looking at utilizing our pool to contain the fire should it reappear or reignite. Concern is the fact that, we were lucky because conditions were relatively calm. It wasn't as dry as it is now. We abut wetlands. It would have easily, if had conditions been windy, this really could have spread and been a much bigger deal than what it was. So thank you to Chelmsford Fire Department and Police Department who, with their quick response. Again, concerns back to the hydrant. That later that morning, about 8:30 a.m., Chelmsford Water Department was at the hydrant on Eclipse Avenue. I did ask the gentleman why that hydrant had failed. He indicated that it was working properly at the moment. He offered to test it for me. I declined. Didn't need to know that it was working at that time. All I could tell him was that it failed earlier that morning when we experienced the issue at my home. He did indicate that there was knowledge that the hydrant on Sunrise Avenue was old and it was slated to be repaired. And apparently the issue earlier that morning bumped it up on the list. The hydrant was indeed replaced on July 6th. Concern is that, so I asked the gentleman, how often are these hydrants tested? How did this fail? He noted that there are 1,500 hydrants in town, labor issues, budget issues, and I indicated that that was not my concern. That's a water department issue that needs to be resolved. My issue is the fact that this is a safety concern. There's reason to believe that a hydrant works. There's reason to believe that 911 works when I call. I understand the town doesn't control this, but I do believe that something needs to be done. There need to be a better set of measures in place to test fire hydrants. Talking to folks, I've heard this isn't the first time a hydrant has failed, but it's not acceptable in my opinion. I do think something needs to be done. I am in the process of pursuing this, reaching out at the state level as well to understand how we can avoid this. And I'm also reaching out via public input and word of mouth, encouraging neighbors and friends who are Chelmsford residents to please reach out, ask about the status of your hydrant because we were lucky, others may not be. So feel free to reach out if there are any questions. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak during public input? Okay, seeing none, I'll move on to committee vacancies. Ken?
Sure. Community vacancies as of August 8th. We have an Arts and Technology Education Fund Committee seat, one unexpired 3-year term available. Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee is looking to fill 1 3-year term. Capital Planning Committee has 1 1-year term. CCA Advisory Committee has 1 1-year term. Commissions on Disabilities has 1 3-year term. Community Action Program Committee has 4 1-year terms. Community Preservation Fund Committee has 1 3-year term. Council on Aging, 2 3-year terms. The Cultural Council is looking to fill 2 unexpired 3-year terms and 1 3-year term. Holiday Decorating Committee is looking to fill 2 1-year terms. The Parade Committee, all applicants are welcome. Those are 1-year terms ending each July 31st. Permit Building Committee has 1 3-year seat available. Public Records Advisory Committee is a 1 1-year term. Recycling Committee is a 1 1-year term. If you have any interest in any of these committees, you can complete an online application available on the town website, or for more information, you can contact the town manager's office here at 50 Billerica Road. Email is tmoffice@chelmsfordma.gov, or you can call 978-250-5202.
Thank you, Ken. Next up, we have public hearings, and we have one continuation for the all-alcoholic beverage package store license, change of location to 133 Princeton Street.
David Keel on behalf of the requester.
Thank you. Does the board have any additional questions? And do you have any additional information?
No additional
Okay.
information. Just wanted to, if you had any additional questions on the pocket license, I know that when we brought that up 2 weeks ago, that was a foreign term for some of you, it seemed to be. We fully expect hopefully to be under construction in a couple months or as fast as the ABCC can approve this. And Manager Cohen also advised me that there's also an extra license available now to the town of Chelmsford, so that seems to further help the situation, but we just wanted to make sure there were no concerns, and if there were, we're here to answer any questions on a pocket license.
Okay, this is a public hearing, so does anyone from the public wish to speak? I'm not seeing anyone here or in the Zoom room, so I will take a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0. Take another motion.
So I'll make a motion to approve the transfer of the all-alcohol beverage license package store from Visoth,
Nguyen?
Nguyen, DBA Chelmsford Wine and Spirits, to Canessa, Inc., DBA Chelmsford Wine and Spirits, and that will be exercised on the premises at 133 Princeton Street.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0.
Thank you for your
Good
time,
luck.
and we look forward to the grand opening and inviting you all.
Good luck.
Okay.
Good luck.
Next up, we have the one-day beer and wine license for the Chelmsford Garden Club.
Hi,
Hi. You just want to give your name and address, please?
Judy Carvin, 181 Littleton Road.
Thank you, Judy. Are there any questions from the board on what the garden club would like to do?
So maybe you want to tell us a little bit about this
The event?
celebration?
It's the Chelmsford Garden Club is celebrating its 100th anniversary,
Wow.
1922 to 2022. And we're holding it at the Barrett Byam home, the historic home where the Chelmsford Historical Society is housed. That's their main headquarters. We're planning to have an afternoon event from 2 to 6 p.m. And we've hired a great band called the Mill City Rags. Is anyone familiar with them? Mm-hmm. They've played at the Chelmsford Center for the Arts twice for the speakeasy event, and they've also performed down at Sunny Meadow Farms with the Chelmsford Open Space Stewards. They're a fun band, and they play all the 20s music, and they, geez, sweet.
You get the moves, Judy, you get the moves.
It's really, and we're going to have some food also. It's not a meal, it's not a lunch, it's not dinner, because it's not lunch or dinner time. So we would like to be able to provide our attendees with a little imbibement. I can guarantee we will not be playing beer pong,
Okay.
okay?
Any questions? No. As the time gets closer, I'll also offer, if you have a flyer or something, we can put it in our public service
We haven't even
announcements.
started advertising or publicizing yet, but I hope everyone here joins us. The tickets are $20 a person, so it's priced right. It's open to the public, and it will be a fun event. We'll have the band will be outside under a tent, and the food and the beverages will be inside in the lower room in the Ralph Parley function room on
Okay.
the lower level. Pat, I believe I asked you if you could present a proclamation that day. We're still on?
Yes.
Okay, it's been recorded. Thank you. So, any other questions?
Go ahead.
I'll make a motion to approve a one-day beer and wine license for the Chelmsford Garden Club to be held October 1st of this year at the Barrett Byam House, 40 Byam Road.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0.
Okay.
Good luck. Thank you.
Thank
Judy.
you. Thank you very much.
Okay, and next up, we have the one-day license for the Alumni Association at the American Legion. And I don't see anyone here from the Alumni Association, except George.
Well, usually it's, Eddie O'Neill comes in though, doesn't he?
Sometimes he
Doesn't
has
have
it.
to. I mean,
This
we
is a
usually-
pretty standard event,
Yeah, I
I
don't
think.
think he's
so.
been-
It's kind of an annual event. We always close the,
Let me just ask the question, does the board have any questions that would preclude us from voting on this evening? Okay, if not, I'll take a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the one-day all alcohol beverage license for the fundraiser on behalf of the CHS Alumni Association to be held August 20th of this year in conjunction with the block party at the parking lot of the American Legion at 90 Groton Road across from Willis Drive.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0. Okay. Do you want to introduce reports and presentations, Paul, or do you want me to?
You can do it more
Sure.
directly than I would.
So I want to welcome May Deviney here for the reports and presentations segment. May reached out to George, who forwarded the communication to me regarding the freight house at the train tracks on School Street, and May had requested to speak in front of the board. I know there's been some updates since then, but why don't we just start with your basic input and we'll take it from there.
Okay. Yeah, I know a lot of activity has happened since I approached the board, and
We need your address too, please, for the
yes,
record.
May Deviney, 26 School Street.
Thank you.
Town meeting representative of Precinct 4 also. My family, next year will be our 40th anniversary of living in this town. We never thought it would go this long, but it's been a wonderful place. And so we've passed the freight depot many, many times. And in the 80s, there was a model train shop there, run by a local man named Stan, and we would visit them. You know, we would go see him. After that, there's been nothing there. But the building has been boarded up. We know it belongs to the railroad. And it seemed like everything was stable, but in the last few years, noticeably, it's gone downhill. There's a hole in the roof. There's a hole in the foundation. And last year, somebody came along and broke all the windows in the front, all the glass out of the windows. And the fact that nothing is being done to patch it up or work on it always said to me that the railroad doesn't use it, doesn't want it, and the next operation would be just to tear it down. And indeed, I think that's what you did find out, that's on the railroad's agenda, CSX, to just tear it down. And I think that would be a loss for the town. I did create a small presentation of the history of the building, but I don't think it's necessary to present it to you, probably not to the historic boards, which I'll go to tomorrow. Maybe it's something could be presented at town meetings so the representatives could see what the history of the building is. And I just want to make sure that people are aware of it. It looks like activity has been done in many ways, and that the Garrison House may be interested in moving it, restoring it, using it for teaching, and that would be really great. So I appreciate the work that everyone's already done on it, and if there's anything I can do to participate in a committee or anything, that would be something I would work on. Otherwise, it's up to you.
Paul, do you want to just provide a quick verbal update on what transpired since we put May on the agenda?
Sure. When the concern was brought forward, a couple things happened. One is I reached out to our public safety officials, meaning the police chief, fire chief, building commissioner, DPW director. Chief Ryan made the contact with CSX. CSX bought Pan Am Railways about 2 years ago, so as was noted by May, they are now the owner of the property. They're based out of Jacksonville, Florida. The representative came out and met us on the site the next day. He was very informative in terms of, as described, that the railway has done an analysis of the property in terms of preparation for demolition, in terms of hazardous materials response and so forth. We had reached out to the same gentleman when he was employed by Pan Am 7 years ago with folks from the Historical Commission and so forth, Bill Nolan, Linda Prescott, such at the time, and you saw in the packet we had an appraisal done, a site plan done, and so forth, and it just didn't come together. The railroad's concerns it's so close to the tracks that they, really were reluctant to give up the property. So the way it was left that day was the building commissioner posted the site as unsafe. They're going to secure the property to prevent additional vandalism or worse out there. In the meantime, the railway is going to get back to us. I've conveyed to the railway the ongoing efforts, as was noted this evening by May, about the effort that was conveyed to me by Linda Prescott over the weekend, that the Garrison House Association has interest in preserving the property, meaning taking the structure and relocating it from its current site, which has no plumbing and has other limitations, to the Garrison Road location and restoring the property and so forth. And so I think it appears to be a viable solution. The funding source would be Community Preservation Fund. It would, for the railroad's benefit, it would avoid them having to pay the costs for demolition and disposal. And from the town and the historical benefit, it would preserve and restore the structure. So that's where things stand. And as soon as I get additional information from the railway, I'll pass it on in terms of if they have any concerns or are willing to support that option. In the meantime, there's a discussion at the Historical Commission meeting tomorrow evening, and I expect a week from Wednesday at the Community Preservation Commission meeting, and likely you'll see an article for town meeting warrant on your next draft of the agenda that I present in 2 weeks, in which you're scheduled to sign in 4 weeks. So as May noted this evening, there's been a lot of progress in a short period of time on this issue, and it looks like it's moving in a positive direction in terms of preservation and restoration.
Any thoughts or questions?
Yeah, I just have a question. So has representatives from the Garrison House actually looked at it? I mean, would they move it intact? Do they have any thoughts yet about how that would happen?
I haven't spoken to the details,
Okay.
but their goal is to relocate the structure from School Street to Garrison Road. I don't know if that will be done intact or if that will be done in sections. And that actually raises a concern, because one of the things, if you note there, is not only the structure, but the foundation is in disrepair. So even if one wanted to keep it at their current location, you may have to raise the house from the foundation to repair the foundation, which would not be inexpensive either. So I don't know, Pat, the details of what analysis they've done structurally or otherwise, but I think this is their early hope, and I imagine you'll see work between now and the next 2 months if it does go to town
Yeah,
meeting.
I mean, it would be a good solution all around, as far as I'm concerned, but, yeah, it's not a short distance from where it is to Garrison House.
But it's not that big of a structure either,
Yeah,
which
right.
maybe makes
Yeah,
it more
especially when it's
viable.
off its foundation.
Right.
It's kind of like a big
Gotta
shed.
take it away from the history, though, Paul, wouldn't it, to move it out of there? I mean,
Well,
it-
I was actually going to ask a question on that before, and to address that, because maybe, and just a thought, I'm away starting tomorrow at 4 o'clock. I'm on a plane, and so I'm going to miss both the CPC meeting and the Historic Commission meeting, which I feel terrible about, and I'm going to reach out to Linda tomorrow to see if maybe we can talk beforehand. But I was wondering, maybe would the train station or the train CSX be willing to donate a section of train rail, so that if you move it to Garrison and put it back, you could put one section of train rail right in front of it, so you get an idea what it was.
they'll go from there to North Chelmsford, that was the next stop. I mean, so it's a lot of history of how people used to get in and out of, go to work from here.
Right. But I think if you put it at Garrison in one of those lots or whatever, and put a piece in, then when you see the door and everything, you'd understand, oh, that was an old train house, and they could give a history of what it was. But it'd be great if the railroad company were donating, 2 pieces of iron
Rail
and,
car, too.
well, let's hold our
That
fingers.
doesn't
Pat.
hurt to ask.
That's right, rail car too, Paul.
Yeah.
Who's moving that?
So again, there'll be much more discussion in the weeks ahead, and whatever the outcome is. But I think obviously the important thing is we've conveyed to the rail, CSX, that there's interest in preserving this structure as opposed to demoing it. Yeah. And
So Ken, I know you'll be away this week, but as this matures, you'll be the liaison for us for
Yep.
those 2 committees. Okay. Do you have anything else, May?
No, that's it. I would also agree that, yes, it does take away some of its history, remove it from where it actually is. But I can understand that there's no way to maintain it as a single structure away from everything else. How would you run it as any kind of an attraction to people to come and look at a historical building You know, if it's with Garrison, it's under the control of people who understand renovation, history, things like that, and they would probably really be able to understand how to set it up best and to use it. So, anyway, thank you.
Right, thank you for
Thank you
bringing it
everything that's
forward.
been done already.
Right.
Okay, so next up, we have the continuation of the definition of the fiscal 23 goals. What I did in the packet was tried to summarize where I thought we landed from our flip charts at our work session. And what I wanted to do this evening is go through and identify how we're going to measure, well, is the goal stated correctly? Do we want to keep it as a goal? And then look at how we measure it, who it's assigned to, and by when we think we'll get it done, and then talk about whether we've missed anything. So any global comments before I start, or can we just start going through them? All right. So the first one is the sewer infrastructure. There were two related to that. One was the short, mid, and long-term planning for the sewer capacity and maintenance, and the second was looking at what's our near-term approach until we resolve our capacity limit issues. So my first question is, does anybody want to change the wording of either of those goals, or do we agree those are goals?
I think you captured it correctly.
Okay. So let's go one at a time. For sewer planning, how would you measure that? So I'll throw out a suggestion. I had two thoughts here. One was that we establish short, mid, and long-term plans. And the second was that those plans also address the, what our approach is going to be for the what's it, infiltration and inflow recommendations, maintenance recommendations that were provided in 2010 and then were provided again as in the draft consent order before they were taken out when the Southwell pump station failed. I think we need to consciously say, how are we going to address that?
You want to consciously state how we're going to address?
Well, so in the 2010 report, there was a recommendation to do the camera diagnostics, and for whatever reasons, we didn't. And then when the Southwell pump station failed, in the first draft consent order that came out from the DEP, they were requiring that we do those same camera diagnostics. And it got the town, and I think Weston and Sampson negotiated that out of the final consent order, and it's costly to do it, but we've never come to closure on, is our plan to never do it again now that we've done the first wave, or are we going to keep doing this for the rest of the sewer system or portions of the sewer system? And that's never been clear to me when I've asked the question. And the last time Weston and Sampson was here, I think it was Mr. Potts said something about, and we know that's expensive, and DEP isn't requiring us to do it anymore. Well, my question is it still something that we should be doing as a matter of good practice? Mm-hmm. And I don't think we've ever gone through and made a decision about that unless I missed something. So that was, in terms of the maintenance issues, that's where I felt, in addition to these short, mid, and long-term plans, those plans should in part address those diagnostic recommendations and how we're going to do them, or consciously and deliberately state we're not and why.
Well, I don't think there's anything more important right now facing the town than our sewage problem, for whatever reasons. And I think it's very important that we look at what we were supposed to do, and we look at what was done and what we're going to do. And I mean, it's the only way we're gonna bring revenue into this town, or else we're gonna have to put people back on septic again, or, I don't know any other alternative, but the only way, the other biggest problem in town is taxes, and the only way we're gonna be able to bring in revenue is to bring in some commercial buildings, and you can't do that without a storage capacity, so, I mean, I'm
Okay.
not looking to hang this on anybody, but I am looking to get it resolved. As somebody said, we need better. Well, this is one situation where we need better. And again, if something was supposed to have been done 10 years ago and it wasn't done 10 years ago, and it was never done, I don't know. Is that the reason we have a problem? I don't know the answer to that either. I mean, I'm sure what everybody with the new team that's in and all the study that's being done in the sewer on 110,
6:41 p.m.
we'll have some answers. And that'll be good. We can work with the answers and make improvements and
Okay.
move forward.
So on 1A for the measurements, I can put something to the effect of there's plans in place for short, mid, and long-term, including an approach for the eye diagnostics. Does that work?
Yeah, it's kind of like we finished phase one, right? And it wasn't phase one the most probable where there would be issues and where we might get a bang for our buck if there was a problem where it would actually help us to gain capacity. So, but the question I think you're saying is let's close that out if it's necessary, as appropriate, and then do we move into a phase two? Do we move into a phase three? And that's really, I think that is what.
I think we have to have a discussion around it.
Yeah, I do too.
Well, I understand the need for phase one and, possibly more phases, but because this would show us not necessarily the health of the system, but where we're having inflows and infiltration, correct?
It's a little of both, isn't it, Paul? And I just said including that. I mean, it's maintenance issues. Like, is there something we should be doing proactively to avoid a surprise on a catastrophic pump station failure? I don't know the answer to that.
Well, that's where we found out our 110 issue.
Right.
Sometimes you can't afford it. I mean, sometimes it just happens, but it's good to have, checks and balances, I guess. And it's like what happened in North Chelmsford. That was just a question of where, I guess. It was a question of something that was 35 years old.
So
But
if I'm not mistaken, Ken, to your question, I believe that phase one showed that we didn't have any significant maintenance problems for the pipes that they looked at. However, it did bring to light the capacity issue on the Littleton Road stretch.
Right. So we also know, so now we know we have that problem along 110, and the rest of the major trunks of the system were fine. But we were also able to surmise from flows and rainfall that a lot of, probably the biggest issue we have is probably septic, sub pumps. So I think part of this should be how do we address that piece of it? That's going to be a little more complicated, but.
And addressing the sump pump hypothesis, because that's really all it is right now.
Can we make that a local ordinance to make that illegal to pump into the?
It is.
It is.
It is illegal, right? So we just don't know who's doing it. Is that correct?
But we know.
Well, and we don't have any facts yet. It's really is that true, Paul? It's a hypothesis, right?
Right. But part of the way to strengthen that hypothesis is in a slow rain that lasts, for days, you're probably not going to get as much of I think, if I understand the issue correctly, but a quick, heavy rain, sub pumps kick on. So you can probably look at sewer flows after heavy, quick rains versus, long, elongated periods of rain. I mean, we can ask Christine Clancy that, but, maybe there's a way to look at flows with rain and kind of digest, like, what's happening here, but.
So do we want to track the 110 Littleton Road issue?
Well, that has to be solved no matter what.
Yeah, right. No,
absolutely.
I get that. Do we want to track that out of here?
Yeah, sure.
It's an outcome of phase one, and then maybe discuss what options might be viable for phase two. I think that's really what we need to do, to your point, Ken, because you got some pumps, there may be other stretches that maybe we should take a quick look at. I don't know, but I think the professionals.
Yeah, we did all the major trunks, right?
Right.
I mean, and the other thing I did was unclear when they spoke was using a pipe at 80% or 90% capacity. Does that?
I don't think we did all the major trunks. We picked a section of the sewer based on age.
They jumped around town,
Yeah.
what they thought were key locations.
Right, they
Okay.
didn't do-
Exactly.
we didn't do it.
But what would the next set be?
Right.
Would there be another 5 or 6 that we should check, and then, is that something worth doing or not?
Right. And
How many miles of sewer do we have, you know?
I don't know the number, it's a lot of sewer.
I know there's, what, 26 miles of road in town or
Wait,
something?
so
We definitely sample the way we're doing it.
we don't have time to solve it tonight. Let's
Oh,
identify
no, but I
what
think
we
it's
want to
good to-
measure. Yep.
I think it's good to put some kind of a plan together, a preventive
Agreed.
maintenance thing, you take, after they finish the study, whatever they're doing it, on 110, then we check the major roads, at least the major roads, the major sections, and see if they have the same, a similar problem.
But, I mean,
And
it may
put it
turn out
on
as a maintenance program.
Maintenance program, right, where every,
year we're doing-
like we did with the electricity and cutting the trees every 25% every year, so that every 4 years, the whole town is done. So I don't know if you could do the same thing with the septic, because I think that's much longer period to check, I'm not sure.
How many years did it take to put the system in?
Oh, gosh. Well, it finished in 2010, and I think they started in, what, the
25 years.
25 years, yeah.
So
You have to
the,
work backwards from.
the key things I have noted here are those short, mid, long-term plans are in place, and I can work the wording, but the content would include the approach for the II diagnostics and addressing the sump pump violation hypothesis, resolving the 110 Littleton Road issue, looking at what are the viable or recommended options for Phase 2, and some type of preventative maintenance plan and program.
Is this also where we would update our policy?
That's 1B, I think.
Just, okay.
I think you, I
So you
think
just
that,
want to switch?
I'm doing 1A right now.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, so who is that? Who does that get assigned to? Is it the town manager, the board, or both?
Well, somebody in the DBW, right? And then.
Well, yeah, but
Yeah.
that's under Paul.
Yeah,
Well,
Paul
I
decides.
would assume, like everything else that's important, it's eventually has to be under the town manager.
It's primarily the town manager with
Yeah.
board support.
And we report back here, yeah.
Okay, and so do you want to do it by when? It might be done in pieces, but,
It's going to be done in, yeah, it's going to be, I mean, I think we'll certainly have something to you by the end of the year, calendar year, in terms of, status, in terms of a plan and actions. But
Maybe-
I think all the things, it's ongoing. It's not going to be done in this whole year, clearly not. But I think it's an ongoing
well,
goal.
can the planning be put in place this year?
I think what we're looking for
Yeah.
is a maintenance plan.
Yeah, I think the plan will be done by this year, but in terms of the execution, we'll go well beyond that.
Well, it might take 15 years.
Right, yeah.
But if there's a maintenance plan in place to say, we'll revisit a section of sewer every year, 1/10 every year for 10 years, and that way we're making sure it's all getting checked.
So I have the first update by December, Paul, and the plan in place by the fiscal year end.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Everybody okay with that? Okay, so let's go to 1B, which was the near-term sewer approach and policy. That's the one you were
Yeah.
referring to, Mark?
Mhm.
So how would you like to measure that?
I think we need to have an approach to a permanent, at least as permanent as it can be, policy by the end of this year, I think. I think we need to get something in place that just stops the total mandate to see if we can clarify that a little bit, and maybe, I know it's not going to be easy, but maybe provide some kind of flexibility in that.
Okay, any other thoughts on measurement?
Well, obviously, it has to be in lieu of a continuous moratorium.
Yep.
So it should be in place, around the time of the moratorium expires or
The end of
shortly
October.
thereafter, yeah.
We got any legal updates on that, Paul? We've had discussions with Paul Haverty, and
He's going to be
Yeah,
here
he'll
for
be
your
here later
sewer
this evening,
discussion
right.
later tonight, so that's on the agenda later for the updates. Can we hold?
on there?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. So the moratorium expires the end of October. If it's, Mark mentioned year end, worst case, you extend the moratorium by 2 months or something, but
Yeah.
what's a reasonable time frame, Paul, that you think?
Oh, I think by then, yeah, clearly
year-
by year end, yeah.
Are people okay with
Open
that?
sooner. I mean, I'm
So-
hoping.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too, but
So I'm gonna put October as the objective, but not later than
Yeah.
December. And that's
yeah,
the town
because even at a
manager.
minimum, we'd have to make some kind of a move for the October date.
Okay. Can we go on to number 2, the road and sidewalk infrastructure? So 2A is the measurements that plan is developed and presented and reviewed with the select board? And what's a reasonable time frame, Paul?
I think ideally we'd want it, but, we're at the end of the construction season, so I think you'd want it, prior to the commencement of the new construction season, so we're probably talking, here we are in August, you probably, again, by year end for the roadway plan,
December?
I think by December, yeah, if not sooner.
Okay, how about 2B? Is that the same time frame?
Yeah, that may take a little bit longer in terms of doing the analysis of the sidewalks, because, we have the thorough report on the roadways. In speaking to Christine Clancy, we really need to do a little more research on the condition of all the sidewalks. So I think that may get pushed out a little further.
Is it like March or the end of the
Yeah,
fiscal year?
yeah.
Or
Certainly not later than the end of the fiscal year. I mean, I'd like to have it by Springtown meeting, but, it's really going to be a question of getting somebody out there when they can turn that around.
So should I put March pending the analysis results? Do we know how bad it is?
Fiscal year end, I get it. Fiscal year end.
Fiscal year end?
Yeah, from Christine, basically, because again, the idea of bringing in a third party.
Yep.
Doing that.
I have one related to that, Paul. I got a question over the weekend about, I think it was the spring 2021 town meeting. There was an Article 35 where we voted, the town meeting voted to authorize the select board to take easements for Turnpike Road sidewalks. And somebody asked me what the status of that was, and honestly, I don't know. So if we haven't done that, can we look at that as
Yep.
part of this master plan?
Yes. Yep.
Must have been the same call.
Okay.
Oh, you got it too?
I asked him before the meeting.
Okay.
We want to get the sidewalks where the kids have to walk to school. I mean, that would
I
be.
think that's part of it, yeah.
That's part of it,
Right.
yeah.
Yep.
That's why we said we were going to bring in the school system and the Commission on Disabilities. Okay, the truck traffic. I guess one thing that's in process that we want to drive to closure is an analysis of alternatives for Ledge Road and the North Chelmsford truck traffic. Right, the NIMCOG study that's been kicked off. So
Does NIMCOG have any jurisdiction over that? Or it's just the DOT that has all the jurisdiction, right?
But they're going to sort of be our facilitator.
Well, question. So maybe we got to bring somebody in from the DOT to talk to us so that the people understand that it isn't just, you get a lot of calls, I get a lot of calls, I'm sure you get a lot of calls. Yeah, people, the trucks. And it isn't just, not Chelmsford, it's Stedman Street, it's other places. Dalton Road.
North
A
Road.
lot of these places, they have no alternative. As a result, we found that out years ago. We shut down Golden Cove Road. 3 days later, DOT, you got to open that road. You can't stop commerce. So what people don't understand, I guess, is what the laws say and how expensive it would be, and how time consuming it would be. So sometimes it's better to sit down and bring the people together and maybe try to bring some kind of a time issue together where they, like people making a lot of deliveries, maybe they can make them at different times of the day or what have you. But I think the law is in the favor of the trucks more than the
So, George,
especially
are
in the
you,
neighborhoods in a lot of places.
are you making sure that we're engaging our state and federal resources along with the businesses and residents as appropriate as part of this? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Particularly in the neighborhoods that have the most complaints, we sit down with them. We don't want them to think that we're avoiding. We have done that, maybe,
Okay.
and we haven't got the people out here, DOT, which, and maybe they're busy,
So we had the alternatives, like you said, what George was saying, just, is there any DOT? Didn't we also have, I know Christine was looking at putting in the permanent speed bumps, and was Spinney also still looking at speed?
Truck exclusion.
What's that?
Truck exclusion routes.
So
And part
it's-
of the one thing too that went on sort of behind the scenes with the traffic committee is we had looked at, and I forget the title we had on it, but we looked at all the major routes in town. We were looking at a commercial truck route, right? And this went on in traffic, and I was brought, I thought, to the select board at one point, but just in broad level. And we laid out all the major routes that were in and around town and saw, because of our geography with the highways and our major roads, how hard it would be to sit there and put up truck exclusions. So I think the approach we were taking is sort of plucking off the busy streets one by one if we could, which to me seemed like we were getting through it, maybe not at the speed that the residents want us to get through it, but we were slowly making headway through a lot of the problems, but I don't know.
So what action are you suggesting we measure against that, Ken?
That's a tough one.
I mean, do we have an annual traffic listening session, or do we just process things as they come in?
Well, we have had now 2 years in a row listening session.
We skipped a year.
different parts of town.
Yeah. So is Chief Spinney right now doing a?
They're analyzing the Swain Road situation right now. They're coming back with a report on Swain Road and
What was he doing there again?
about whether it's possible to have a truck exclusion off of Swain Road. And the question, was there an alternative route such as
Yeah, right.
Drum Hill?
Okay, that's the
Yeah.
first thing we said,
Right.
yeah.
So I've got
Are you looking
analysis.
at cameras too,
Cameras,
to monitor traffic?
They have cameras on ledge now.
Yeah, but I don't know
They
what
took it
Talking
down.
about them on Swain?
You said
No,
something
that's on
about,
the asphalt plans on
drones.
Rotten Road.
Okay.
That's
Yeah,
not
that's
here.
just- Only because they're allowed only 200 trucks a day in there.
So right now I've got the analysis of alternatives for North Chelmsford, engaging our state, federal, business, and residents as appropriate, looking at speed bumps, traffic calming, and truck exclusion alternatives. I think engaging state, federal, and business and residents covers the whole town. That's not just exclusive to North Chelmsford. Are we okay with that, or is there more you want to put in terms of measurements? Okay, so is that the town manager and the board? Don't all
I
speak
mean,
at once.
it all flows to the town manager on
I
that
agree
one.
with that.
Because again, we're back to DPW, police.
Okay. So how about the by when? I know it's kind of ongoing all year long.
Which one?
I'm still on 3.
Yeah, I know, but would you just say, what about the,
I said by when?
oh, by when? I mean, to me, that's like an ongoing, because we'll get an update from Chief Spinney, and between now and then, we'll be reviewing that, and then we'll
So
on to
we'll
the
keep
next
measuring it.
topic. I don't want to make it ambiguous, but I'm not sure.
You'd hope some would be done quickly and some are going to take longer.
You get output and then you decide the next thing, so.
Yeah, right, it just keeps going.
I don't want to say
Well-
the squeaky wheels get in the oil, but,
Well, and so we'll just make sure we're incorporating this in the monthly traffic reports and more frequently if we need it. Is that reasonable?
Yeah.
Okay,
that's what we're doing, it seems to be working.
okay. So number 4 is the ARPA funding. Mark, I captured your thought, but I wasn't sure what to put in for X% by
I
what date.
wasn't either, I just was,
Or if we want to keep that as a goal, or if it's just part of project reporting, which is the second one, 4B. Is it a measurement or is it a goal or what is it?
well, I was concerned that we hadn't,
Mm-hmm.
you know, placed any orders yet. So to me, I was trying to put something out there that would at least kind of hold some accountability to making sure that that happens. And then from there, tracking the progress on those projects as they get issued. Kind of the chicken and the egg.
Do you want quarterly reports or on all the projects?
Well,
or
what are your
you know?
thoughts about,
Well,
you think that you'd be able to, I know you were looking to get some help.
Right, the problem is you need the resources to do the projects, and sometimes we're finding that we can't even get private vendors to work on the technical aspects of the procurement. So that's what I'm saying. So I think the best we can do is give you, whether you want monthly or quarterly updates on the ARPA projects in terms of where we are in terms of
and we manage the real-time dynamic as it happens.
in terms of procurement and even implementation.
Have you been having trouble with the HVAC stuff? Have you-
Yeah,
with what?
we've got vendors who basically say, hey, yeah, we're glad to help you out, but, you know, they're short-staffed for resources, and they can't provide us with, you know, because it's the same problem everybody's having with supply chain and also just even workers to do the type of analysis that need to get something out to bid.
Have you had any success getting help, temporary help for procurement? Just so somebody can focus on this?
Well, I mean, I've made 2 suggestions. One is one suggestion was the use of ARPA funds to hire an assistant facilities director as part of succession planning, but also in terms of getting this work done. And the other one is we're still looking for a projects person in DPW engineering who can help us, because
Projects will help to shepherd it along.
Exactly.
I'm thinking about getting these orders out there and
Right.
placed.
right.
So is if we put project report, Mark, from what I'm hearing, if we have 4A or incorporate 4A into 4B, so we're providing routine reporting on the status of the funds, the procurement, and the individual project progress. The measurement is monthly reporting, Paul, because we said we wanted monthly, not quarterly
exactly.
before. And is there another goal or another objective measurement that you want to put in there, Mark, that says, we shoot for a certain percentage of procurement processes complete by a certain date?
Yeah, so we have till 24, right?
Yep, well, we have till 26 to complete everything.
Yeah,
We have
but we have till
24
24
to
get it out
allocate the
there.
fundings.
And there was
Right.
also concerns about a changeover, politically, that funding could get changed.
Yeah.
So, to me, is the end of the fiscal year
To have everything procured by the end of the fiscal
to
year.
get, basically, even if you said 95% placed.
I mean, I think we need to have a discussion about how much buffer we want to hold back in case some of these.
Well, that's just the things that
Well,
we've
this is
asked
just what's already
Yeah, I'm
approved,
with you,
Pat.
Pat.
We haven't gotten to that part yet.
We haven't
That's
even
what we're
gotten-
seeing.
okay, yeah. This is just what we've already said to go with.
Sure, we'll try. Like I said, we'll give you monthly updates, you know,
Yeah.
basically my plan is that
95% of the procurement process
Just throw it out
completed
That's-
by year, by
Yep.
end of fiscal year?
that's our goal.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a goal.
Okay, so that takes care of 4A and 4B if I put that together and then have the two
Right.
measurements.
And then as they get issued, you will just track projects.
All right. 4C was the remaining funding allocation, Pat, which is where I think you were going.
Correct.
And what we had said during our meeting was we would do this as applicable as we got smarter on how the current projects were doing and how much they were going to cost.
And that's why it's so important that we do get some of these placed to get the costs firmed up.
So my thought on the measurement for 4C was that I think we want to have a discussion about it no later than the fourth quarter
Yeah. Yeah.
as we get smarter, right?
Yep.
We're kind of putting we might not,
March
we
30th
we
or
might not
something like that.
allocate everything this fiscal year because we still have time, but we should at least have
What
the
if we said
discussion
end of
about it.
Q3, fiscal Q3?
Yeah, we can do it in Q3 and again in Q4 if we need to.
Yeah, exactly.
Does that work for you? Paul?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we could do it sooner if something,
Okay.
things get solidified.
Anything else on the ARPA funding? Okay, could we go to 5 now? There were two discussions at our work session around budgets, and they were both about more frequent and earlier visibility, one with respect to operating and one with respect to capital. So if we want to keep these as goals, what I would like to know is how do you want to measure them?
As I recall, you were concerned about the sweet spot between when you've got it prepared and when it's kind of locked in and it goes over to finance, right?
Yeah, basically, how it works is the budget requests go out October 1st. They're not due back till October 31st. So that's that's one goalpost, is the October 31st, we have them in hand, the request, capital and operating, finance director. The other goalpost is January 31st, because that's, basically the end of January, you have to have
Right.
those budget released. So you've got basically the November, December, and January.
Right, so that's what I'm trying to figure
Exactly.
out is when would a good time be so we can get a look at it? So if there are any questions that we have about it, we can ask them now, maybe get that input into the budget. So, we're not, again, in front of town meeting and then maybe we're not completely aligned.
Yeah, capital goes before operating. So, what we could do is by mid-November, before Thanksgiving, we can give you the requests in terms of what has been submitted and what's the capital committee looking at. And then mid-December, we'll give you the output of what the capital committee recommended. Those are the two benchmarks, because basically capital planning committee takes about a month. Operating is a little behind that.
Right.
Realistically, by beginning of December, we could give you early insight of what's been requested, where are we at, and then I would say by mid-January, we could give you where things are heading before it's finalized at the end of January.
But you already know, like, right now, what the hot buttons in the budget are going to be.
Yeah, but I don't know the parameters of them, Ken. I know what the hot buttons are, health insurance, solid waste, Middlesex retirement assessment and so forth, but I just don't have the magnitude of scope of what those are. That's the problem. We know what the hot buttons are, we just don't have a sense of scope. And the problem becomes is we don't often have that until the 11th hour. And not even to mention the state aid issue, which we're not going to know at the end of January, because there'll be a new governor coming in who'll have till February, mid-February, to release his or her first budget.
Paul?
So we can give you the parameters, but we'll give you the variables. We'll basically say, health insurance could be between X and Y, and this is the spread. We can do those things.
Well, you could do, you know, based on the last 3 years, 9%, 10%, 12%.
Yeah, but health insurance can swing, that's not
Yeah.
probably as stable as pensions or,
Right, and even,
but trash is going to be a shocker this year.
Right.
Yeah, it is.
So, but, I'm sorry, I'm looking, like, we always know health and pensions are going up,
Right.
right? This year, like I said, the shocker is going to be trash. Are there any other shockers that we should be aware of? In an era of inflation and with what's going on, should we be expecting higher fuel charges because, to charge all the vehicles, to fill up all the vehicles, or higher? I mean, I want to know well ahead of time, like what if anything are going to be the big variables as we go into the budget?
Yeah, and are there other areas we need to pull back?
So what I captured from all this is, for the operating budget, by the beginning of December, you'll let us know what's been requested, and by mid-January, you'll let us know kind of where things are headed. For the capital budget, by the middle of November, you'll let us know what's been requested. By mid-December, you'll let us know what the committee came back with. And with the rest of this discussion, for both of those, my suggestion would be something like real-time updates on emergent issues and trades.
Oh, yeah.
Will be presented to the select board. Does that address your comments?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Are you okay with that, Paul?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. Okay, so number 6 is tax strategies. The content of the senior citizen is later in the agenda, so let's just keep this discussion to how we're going to measure things, okay? So the tax classification, I think that's really a select board with support from the town manager.
You know the deadline on that, beginning of December. Right. And
So Paul, I mean, your role in this is we still have a couple of outstanding items that we were looking for to continue that discussion, so.
Can you refresh my memory on that?
So I guess what we should do, our last discussion was in July, right?
Yep.
So maybe what we should do is schedule a September and an October, just to recalibrate and make sure we're staying on top. So the outstanding item that I remember is, Mark had asked what portions of the budget specifically go towards supporting businesses.
Yep.
And then Frank had given us the spreadsheet, and he had given us some information on some of the tax programs, and I think we might need to kind of come back and look at those as well. And then Paul, in the meantime, has done more work on the work program for senior citizens. So I'll just say September, October, November, we'll continue our working discussions.
And whose goal is that? That's select board.
Yeah, that's ours for tax classification, yep.
The first week in December?
Right, so that we're more prepared going into the hearing in November and the decision in December. And then in the work session, Paul had brought up also taking on, from the tax strategy standpoint, looking at options for senior citizen property tax relief. So Paul, is that your lead with support from us on this one, or what is?
Yeah, or whatever, I mean, yeah.
It's all interrelated.
Yeah.
What is it?
Because it looks like the current policy is kind of losing against
inflation.
So do we want to true it up? And if we did, what would the cost impact be to the rest of the classification?
Right, which is the concern Pat brought up too during that session.
And that does have to go to town meeting for the additional funding.
It's been going on about 10 years now.
Well, I think the discussion of what we do and when we do in town meeting, that's later, but how are we measuring this?
Well, it's so specific, isn't it? It's.
So the options are presented and we've kind of made a decision, right?
Right.
Yeah.
It's almost like another line item in it.
On tax relief, we're working off the tax?
I'm on 6B, George, the senior citizen
Okay,
property tax relief, yes.
I got it here.
Bless you.
Right.
Yes.
Yes, George, you're on it.
The same people, Paul, how long have you been doing this? About 10 years now, probably?
More
Doing
than
what,
that.
doing what? What's that?
The work off?
The seniors?
Oh, they've been doing that since the 1990s.
Yeah.
Well,
30
So-
years.
15 years, whatever.
30 years, yeah. Yeah, Bernie Lynch started
The
that.
same, it seemed like for a while that the same people would, I mean, I would hope that somebody that was turned down this year would be the first in line like the next year, so that it isn't the same people that are getting the tax relief all the time. I don't know who's in charge.
Well, we're trying not to turn people away at all, George. That's
Yeah,
one of the
well, that's good,
approach.
but I
Yeah.
mean, but I don't know, I mean, you only have so much money, right?
That's why we want to, I don't want to get into the weeds, but that's why we're trying
Yeah,
to
we're-
address that. yeah.
We're going to
Change the
talk about that
thresholds.
in
Right.
a little bit.
Yeah. Tweak the thresholds more current.
Is it okay with you guys if I just keep the same by when, meaning that we know what our approach is going to be by the end of December, recognizing that there may be something that goes to fall or springtown meeting?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we could do.
Legislative leverage. I think that is all 6 of us.
How do we measure it?
So I have a couple thoughts. One measurement I would like to see is that we clearly understand the legislative process and the dates and the gates when we can provide influence into the budgeting process, which is earlier than waiting for the earmark cycles, I believe. The second part that I think we should address is the relationships with our legislators, both from the standpoint of liaison assignments and whether we want to do something as a board or a group to bring them together.
Well, we have three reps and one senator, right? So maybe we could try to bring all 4 of them together with the board at some meeting prior to this meeting, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, I think even at the root of it, George, it goes even more basic than that, because Virginia, kind of tested me on this when she asked me how often I met with our legislators, and, over the course of a year, I think I had 4 cups of coffee, and it was all with the same legislator. And I said, all right, well, I see what's going on. She's right. I wasn't spreading out my bandwidth to other ones. So I think what she's saying is we all need to be more active with our one-on-one outreach to our legislators. And
So I guess what it is the measurement is we're going to identify the budget process cycle and our opportunities to influence it. And then the other, and this may be just as an agenda item, where we have a separate discussion on how do we improve the actual relationships with our legislators. And we do that, by early fall, I think, so we can kind of,
I would like to get them all in the same room one time, and tell them exactly what our
Yep,
problems
and
are.
that's
So that they
part of
all
it.
understand the same.
That won't be by,
Probably, yeah.
that won't be by early fall. That won't be till after the first.
No,
Thursday.
Said and done, maybe.
I'm saying we're going to have the discussion on what we're going to do by
Okay.
early fall.
Okay.
I would like to see happen.
Okay.
And maybe some of them, some people pay attention to their liaison people, and some don't, and some of the legislatures don't pay attention to us, no matter how many times you call them, so.
Well, I know one thing for sure. If you call them only when you need something, they're really not going to pay attention to you.
When everybody else needs something too. So you
So-
gotta develop a rapport.
So I'm going to say, well, the election's in November.
First Tuesday in November, yeah.
So I'm going to say the budget cycle process is identified as one measurement, and the second one is something along the lines of, we're going to have a discussion around improving our relationships in the fall to include addressing one-to-one and also a select board group discussion with our legislators. I'll work on the wordsmithing. So I think we basically want to have that in place by November, so we're ready to go when the elections are done. Okay, number 8 is the Chelmsford Center for the Arts. This is really about reporting, so how often would the board and Paul like to see the reporting happen?
I thought quarterly.
Quarterly?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
Yeah, I think we've already talked
Yeah,
about
I'd say
Lexi
quarterly.
coming
Yeah.
in September to do her first.
Yep.
Okay,
So whose goal is it?
I think that's Paul's. Okay. So number 9 is civic engagement. Nine A, there was a discussion about general collaboration and effectiveness with the boards and committees. So is that a discussion that we have first? Is that really what our objective is? Because we don't know what that looks like yet. There were some ideas put out there.
Yeah, maybe it
But
is
I think the
a,
discussion is for another night.
it's fine, but
No,
maybe
go
it is an agenda item for the board where we maybe go through historically what has been done in the past to see if we want to revisit those.
Sure.
'Cause I think in the past you used to have chair meetings or something that.
So you want to revisit the historical approaches and discuss potential
Path forward.
new, how do we do it today? When would you like to have that discussion by? We have an awful lot front-loaded into the early part of the fiscal year, I'll just remind you.
Well, October then?
That's not the early part of the fiscal year? That's still,
Still early? Too early?
I think this is important. I don't know that it's as urgent as some of the other things.
I don't know how heavy a lift it is, though.
Yeah,
Well, when do you want to have the discussion? We could start with that.
it's November.
Sure.
Does that make sense? December always seems to be packed.
well, October is too, because we have town meeting thrown in there.
November's pretty
Oh, I
busy,
know.
too. Sure.
So November?
Yeah, but November is, tax classification and all that. I would go with January, February.
Me too.
January,
Okay.
February?
Is that okay?
Puts it off a bit, but okay.
Sure. I'll hold the ball, you kick it.
I tell you what, if the agendas become light, we'll accelerate it. Are you okay over there?
Yeah, that's fine. I'm waiting for the agendas to become light.
Yeah.
The Economic Development Commission, do we want to keep that as a goal? This is a town manager assigned commission, is it not? Appointed commission?
Yep.
So do you want to have a discussion with the board about it in terms of options, or what are we looking for? Pat, you brought this up.
Yeah, I think that's pretty specific. That, I think, could be done in the near term if there's any interest and if there's anything that commission could help Lisa with. And if not, then let's abolish it, rather than have the commission listed on our website
So it's-
that's meaningless.
So a September activity? Something to do with one of the meetings in September?
To do what, Paul?
Have a discussion.
Discuss it.
And
Just
bring
what?
it, invite in members of the EDC for a discussion, yeah. Probably, say probably the end of September.
Okay.
Can't do it before then, it's vacation period.
Well, we'll extend the invitation by September and see when we can get them all together.
Okay.
Who's their chair now?
No
I
idea.
don't think they've met
I don't think they haven't met in over a year, last.
and is their last year even still on the commission?
The question that I have, if you're going to invite them in for a discussion, wouldn't the courteous thing be to give them some time so they can meet first? They're not the same members that they were, right? There was somebody new assigned.
Yeah,
You're going to call the whole commission, and I think
almost
we
think
should
it-
give
yeah,
them
the
time. We should
discussion.
give them some space to,
Yeah.
talk amongst themselves.
Send an invite by the end of September, and then they can come back saying, we're ready in October or November, whenever they're ready.
Okay,
But I think we should get the invite out by next month,
yeah.
if not sooner.
Okay, then I threw out the idea on 9C, which was the increasing youth and young adults in our community, or looking at how we could do that. Is that something the board wants to keep? I did have one person reach out to me and said if you guys keep this, she would love to come in and talk to the board about her ideas, but
Is she a member of any committees? Did you
I don't
invite her?
think so. It was earlier this year when I had mentioned it during it was like I was at a coffee and I mentioned it. But for me, what this would look like is maybe like reaching out to the high school civics group and seeing if they wanted to have a discussion with us about their thoughts, or I don't want to prescribe what this looks like, but do we still want to keep it?
Would it be as a different approach to this? Again, I'm just sort of spitballing. Every year, early spring, April, May, I get inundated with emails from sophomores, juniors asking to fulfill their civics commitment for their class, and can they do an interview, or can they talk about a topic, and, maybe it's something we reach out to the civics or to the school committee and ask if their civics teachers want to pick a kid of the month to send here, like they do with the school. I don't know.
So that's a good idea too. So maybe where we're headed is schedule a discussion on an agenda, so we can kick around these ideas and figure out what we want to do.
Yeah, is
if
there somebody
anything.
from the school too who runs the civics group that maybe we could have them here to help to guide the discussion with us?
I think there's 2 teachers that run the civics
Can't
program.
remember who it is, but I remember talking to them when I was in the process.
So we want to schedule a discussion with the CHS civics group or faculty.
Yeah.
But do we want to do it directly, or we want to reach out to school committee? I don't want to step on any toes.
Well, we can ask how they would prefer to do it.
I don't know that we'd be stepping on any toes
Yeah.
to do that.
You never know.
No.
I can make a call and ask. So when do we want to do that by? Is that like another January, February?
I think so.
That'll give them time to come up to speed too with the start of their school year. Okay, process improvement. Do we want to keep both of these the way they're stated? Paul, most of this falls on
Curve or
you.
stay
You have
behind it?
thoughts?
Which do you want to do?
I'm sorry, I missed the...
I just asked Paul if you wanted to get in front of the curve or stay behind it. To me, this is an opportunity. This is just more of a goal to get the departments looking at that, to make it a specific thing that they focus on, so that they bring it forward. And I guess we can start to see what's going on. And as a matter of fact, it may be a conduit through you back to us, to just hear what's being put in place, what's being updated and changed, what things are gaps there might be that may need additional input from us. I don't know. Depends on what comes up. But to me, a lot of things kept coming back to process since I've been sitting here for 14, 15 months. And
I'm just trying to think of the measurements and timing. I mean, I'm wondering.
well,
if
you could say do a gap analysis and identify opportunities by a certain date, and then correct them by the end of the fiscal year. I mean, you could do something as simple as that. I don't know if anybody else has any other thoughts.
Yeah,
I
I'm just
think you
trying
have to do the gap analysis by a certain date
Right.
and see what the gaps are
Right.
to know what the time frame is that you can correct them.
Yeah, that's what I said. So you do a gap analysis first, and then from that, you come out with a schedule, which will be updated and checked in with us at the end of the year, or quarterly, or whatever everybody wants. Unless you don't want to do it.
What are your thoughts,
maybe
Paul?
I'm just thinking quarterly starting in December. I mean, I'm just thinking in terms of, I'm thinking we're right at Labor Day, so if we kick it off, I should have something to report in 3 months.
Yeah, that's
Then
fine.
another 3 months in April, and then another 3 months in June, right? I'm just thinking, right? I mean, that makes sense?
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, okay.
So you, for both of these, you want it to be kind of quarterly reporting on
Quarterly, yeah.
progress?
Yeah, quarterly, yeah. With
I
the
see.
first report due, no later than the end of the calendar year.
Okay. And that's for both of those, right?
Yeah.
Number 11, excuse me, is Parks and Recreation.
So, sort of a side note on all of this. When we finished our goals planning and we counted how many goals there were we agreeing to keep all of them, or are we then going to go through this and?
That was part of your assignment, is if you don't think it should be in here,
I'm
to
just
say
making sure,
so. Yep.
because we're just kind of rolling through them.
No, I've been asking it every one, is
All
it a
right, all
goal?
right, all right.
Nobody said no.
Well, that's what brings me to this one.
Okay.
I'm wondering if maybe, because I'm looking at the number of goals and we haven't
It's
kicked
a
any
lot.
out yet, and I'm sitting here going,
Well, there's a couple that I think are just, not just, but that are reporting ones, like number 8 and the one we just did, number 10. So they would kind of go on to 13.
Well, like number 10 is just reporting, but for Paul, and it's work.
Right.
I mean, to me, 11's important, but in the greater scheme of some of these other goals, they do seem more important. So, I mean, we can come back to it, but if there's too many at the end,
So is it a goal, or is it something we just ask Paul to look at and see?
I mean, how heavy lifting is it?
It takes some effort in terms of, but I'm thinking you really would want it done by the start of the
Next spring?
next spring, yeah. So I'm
Yeah.
thinking like an April 1st, deadline, and then maybe we give some kind of an interim report January, you know what I'm saying? Trying to be
Okay.
real, it doesn't mean we don't do anything till January. It means kind of get things going, say, hey, where are we at in January, and then have it done by April, so that, as you said, when people are starting to go back outside, you have all this information available. So, yeah, let's go with that.
So there's your time frame, January, April next year.
Yeah.
Are you okay taking this one on, Paul,
Yeah,
or
no, I
is it
think,
too
yeah.
much?
I think just keep pounding away, so.
So I'll just say it's going to be deployed by January, April, sometime between January and April. Okay, the next one, there were two things that I clumped under strategic planning. One was one that I put forward, which was development of a town strategic plan. And I was also, when I did this, I was also reflecting on some of the things we started last year, but also some of the recent comments that we don't really have a lot of long-term planning in the town. And the second was the growth strategy, which Evan provided some more clarification. If you could entertain me a little bit, I'd like to explain a little bit more about what I meant by the town strategic plan. I happened to this weekend go on the City of Oshkosh website because a colleague of mine had just got a job there, and I was curious. And I printed out a couple of screenshots from this org chart, just for your reference, if you could pass those. But if you go to their org chart, at the top of the org chart, they've clearly done some strategic thinking and strategic planning. So they have a vision, and we developed a vision here for Chelmsford, and then they've also got their mission statement. And then if you go over to the right side of their org chart, which I have up on the screen, and it's the second screenshot on the handout I gave you, they have their guiding principles, which are kind of the equivalent of values, right? So they did their vision, values, and mission. Then if you flip the page over and you go a little bit down the org chart, under the city council members, they have what they call priority goals. And they have basically 5 kind of goals listed at a very top level. So improve and maintain our infrastructure, support business economic development, strengthen neighborhoods, quality of life, and a high-performing government. If you go to their homepage, you can then click on their strategic plan option, and you come to this public dashboard, and what you see from it is they've gone through some strategic planning where, for example, one of their goals was support business economic development. And so here they have economic development, support economic development, and they have someone assigned and they've identified their future state. And then I can click on economic development to read more. Oops, sorry, this one was clicking on effectiveness of the government. But I can click on any one of those to read more, and then you get to that, and they have specific goals about what does develop an effective, high-performing government mean. So then this to me was like they probably drove that down into goals for that year. So they kind of have those big 5 goals. And if you remember when Katie met with us, she was talking about going from values to goals. In my mind, there's more to it from a planning standpoint. You got to look at kind of your internal and your external environment and do a little bit more than jump from values to goals. But my thought here, when I brought this up last year and this year, is, I don't know that this is achievable in a 1-year time frame with everything else we have on our plate, but it would be, maybe it's something where we would at least want to go look at options for what would it cost to have someone facilitate helping us develop a strategic plan for the town, and what kind of time frame would that take. It's something that we probably have the capability, we could facilitate it ourselves, but there's kind of a conflict of interest in doing that. Because if you're a participant, you shouldn't be the facilitator. So that was my thought with the strategic plan part, is we did a vision and values, but we haven't taken it to the next step. And I know, Paul, from the discussions with Katie, it sounds like she's done this with other municipalities, but I don't know. I know there's a cost associated with that, and I don't know if what she had in mind was doing more than jumping from values to goals. I don't think that's a valuable exercise. It's valuable, but I don't think that's going to get us to where we need to be.
I don't know if you've shared what you saw, but if you do have the link for this or other municipalities that have done it, it'd be worth sharing that too with some of us. We can kind of be on the same page. I think it's a start for sure.
Yeah.
Because, I like it. I want to kind of see what it's, in other words, when you get it done.
How it materializes?
Yeah, and then how is it going to make a difference? Do you know what I mean? I think what it ends up doing is it'll help to form our goals for next year.
Right.
As we're starting to fill this in.
It helps provide the priorities and the guideposts based on what your mission, vision, and values are.
I get it, but I think the other part is communicating outward from here to why we're doing it and why it makes sense to do it. The other thing is the board switches over.
So I guess my question is, do we want this on here in some form? And if so, what is that form? Is it to go look at developing one? Is it to schedule another conversation around this? Because we've never really had we can go get examples from other municipalities and then schedule another conversation around it if we think it's worth having a conversation. But I don't think, it's non-trivial to take it on.
No.
I think we have to decide as a board and with Paul that it's important to do, which is why I'm reluctant to just say, develop a strategic plan, because you have to know how you're going to go do it.
I think rather than looking at other municipalities, we should start by looking at our municipality and involving some of the other boards and committees and see what their thoughts are about it too, and how they might help us go forward with it. And then maybe see how long it took Oshkosh to come up with theirs. I mean, I'm sure they have a city council, so they're probably, maybe they're not full-time, but probably a lot more involved than we are.
And I'm sure there's probably other municipalities in Massachusetts we could look at.
Mhm.
I mean, Oshkosh is a big city, I just happened to
Right.
look at that one. But I think, if I recall, when Katie was bringing this up, she said, the top level, they would do like in a year with the board, but then they would now start diving deeper with with the departments, as much as the town wanted to do that. But I think at least at a top level, it would be helpful possibly to have some guideposts in place. So I'm really open. If you tell me you don't want it at all, I'll take it out. If you want to just have the discussion like Mark suggested with a little bit more data and background behind it and figure out if we think we want to do something with this or not. What are you thinking, Paul?
I'm just hoping it's later in the fiscal year because we
Well,
got a
but,
busy,
like,
no, because we
I
got a
don't-
busy fall. I mean,
Right,
yeah,
I don't
that's
think.
That's what I'm thinking.
That's why I'm saying this is non-trivial, which is
Right,
why I'm
that's
not
what I'm
sure
worried
develop a
about.
strategic plan is the right goal, because we don't even know how we would start.
Right.
Right, so if it means getting a better understanding of what that looks like, I think that's what you were saying, Mark, give people a better understanding of what it looks like and the value it would bring by way of example.
Right.
And then we could talk about
Yeah, have a common
how,
understanding.
if at all, that translates to Chelmsford in
A-
terms
a
of a
plan.
path forward.
A plan for the plan, basically.
Yeah,
It's a good way of putting it.
so do you want to do that or something else, or delete it?
What I like about what you showed us is it seems to follow what we've already tried to do for the last 2 or 3 years, right? We went through the vision, values.
Yeah, we just haven't been able to get
It's just
there.
not done that way. And then I think, so I like that part of it, but I guess to Mark's end, that what I don't want to do is spend, 2 years of doing this and then there's no buy-in, it's on a website somewhere and nobody pays attention to it.
Right.
Yeah, it's like wallpaper,
Yeah.
that didn't do as much. Where I'm torn, and I'm not trying to like circumvent that idea, because I think it's a good idea, but it's the growth strategy seems to always be what we struggle with, is what I feel. And I know it's a tier down, it's probably would be a block below in the overall plan, but I'm concerned with how long it'll take us to get there. And all these things are starting to hit us right now.
Would you like to plan for a discussion like in Q3 or Q4 about this topic?
We can. I'm not.
Yeah,
I'm not sure what the solution to the growth strategy is, though, because of where
No,
we are right
not
now.
growth.
No,
I'm
I'm
on
not-
this
No, I
one.
know.
Okay.
So we have time to look at this and deal with growth
In
as a subset.
parallel.
Well, I was going to say later.
Okay.
Because where are we going with growth? We got a sewer moratorium in place. We don't really have a solution that's falling into our lap on it.
and we have development trying to come in, we've got a sewer moratorium, we've got empty space that is really gonna affect that as well, and then we have a couple of other.
But and you get businesses walking. Got a call today from a realtor asking me what the sewer moratorium was all about. They have a company that wants to move on 129, and when they told me what it was, I was like, call town hall, but I don't, how is a car wash going to move to 129? Just.
Okay, can we close out the
Yes.
12A? Is it to plan for a discussion with examples and how it would be used? We'll target Q3 or Q4 for that. Is that reasonable?
Yeah.
I'd prefer Q3 in case we want to do something to set up for the next year. Okay, so now let's go to the growth strategy. And we have the supplemental letter from Evan explaining his view of it. Paul, I don't know if you want to add anything to this. You brought it up again this year.
No, I mean, we're getting conflicting pressures, as you're seeing by, it seems like any project that goes before the planning board. There's people who are concerned about truck traffic, as we talked about earlier, the overdevelopment of town in terms of residential development and projects. And then you get the other side of the coin, sort of the constraints coming in on the commercial side. So
But it's interesting that Evan wrote this letter now, because Evan has never, I mean, I've had a lot of discussions with Evan, in planning board meetings, and when you go to these hearings, it never comes up about how much tax revenue is going to be generated, or we've always kind of stayed away from the effect on schools and the tax revenue generated. So it's kind of, so I don't know if he's, where it's coming from, if he's speaking to the current makeup of the planning board, or if he's, like, I was just trying to figure out why now.
I think there's been discussion at recent planning board meetings about conversion of properties and the whole question about whether it's better to have a vacant office building versus a warehouse building. I think that's the stuff that's generating this right now.
Oh, I
Yeah,
see.
that's
Yeah, I
what
saw
I'm
that.
seeing.
I saw
That's
that
what I'm
meeting.
seeing right now. It's coming
Yeah,
up,
and
you
he's
know.
concerned about the CIP contribution
Right.
going down.
Right.
And, what's our real strategy about that? Because it's going to put more and more pressure here in on businesses if the boards now or in the future start to offset it with, classification. As opposed to with growth.
Hmm.
I guess I have another dimensional view to add to this, and I've talked to Paul about it too. Is we don't take in enough revenue through our local taxes and state aid for the operating budget that we have, and that gap has largely been filled in the past through development. And so now with development waning, to me, it's a strategy of what are we going to do from a fiscal standpoint to fill that gap. I honestly, to me, this is going back to the financial piece of it. And I struggle with whether this is a board goal or whether this is really Paul's goal.
I think it's a combination. I hope it would be a combination. I hope a lot of the
Okay.
major goals are combinations,
Yeah.
because,
Yeah, but budget solely falls on
well,
Paul.
eventually, but I mean, I would like to see all these things discussed, maybe a lot more than they have been.
And I guess the other thing that I struggled with Evan's letter a little bit is to Ken's point. It's always been very clear in the planning board meetings that the planning board is a regulatory board, and they are to evaluate things based on the zoning regulations.
Mhm.
And they're in their role as that regulatory board, they're not supposed to factor the fiscal part into the decisions. It's really about the zoning regulations, right? So I don't, and I understand that there's a dynamic on the planning board right now where those kinds of questions are being asked. And, I mean, Attorney Haverty's here, maybe he could help advise us, but at the end of the day, I don't think the planning board can make a decision based on a fiscal strategy, even if we were to put one in place.
Well, they are separately elected, so that plays into it also. It has to.
Say more.
Well, I mean, the people that run, they run on a specific item, issue, philosophy, and that's how they get elected. So they can't, run on one thing and then turn around and not address that during the meetings. And even though it may not be, maybe they do go a little bit beyond where they should, that's what they're going to do because that's what they've said they're going to do.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
So,
But how is this going to,
I mean,
how's this ever going to influence the decision they make if they have to make a decision based on the zoning reg?
But they can take, I mean, Paul, I think this question was clarified by Paul to Evan the last few weeks about they can take into consideration the economics.
For the record, Paul Haverty, Town Council. The only things that the planning board can take into consideration when it's reviewing a special permit application are the factors that are listed in the zoning bylaw, all right, and in their own special permit criteria. That's part of their rules and regulations. That's what has to be reviewed. That's what decisions have to be made consistent with. I have seen local bylaws that have had provisions that talk about economic impact and list that as a criteria. So it's certainly something that can be in there, but I don't believe it's currently in the special permit criteria that we have in the zoning bylaws. So I don't think it would be appropriate for them to do it as the bylaws are currently written. But certainly,
Currently,
they take into account traffic impacts.
You're saying currently it's inappropriate under the current,
It's not a factor that's listed, to the best of my knowledge, and I didn't look at this before coming here tonight, so I don't know for sure, I'm sort of speaking off the cuff. But if it is not listed in the criteria for issuance of special permits, then it can't be included as a factor for either granting or denying a special permit. Because then you get into the realm of a decision that's arbitrary and capricious.
okay.
Anything else?
But just to be clear, to that end, like, you know, we're under the previous goals. I said, you know, we're looking to get an update from the town manager on things that may be coming down. The budget's his purview, so I don't think we should be involved in trying to even give any decision on the budget. That's his job, is to look at the numbers coming in and figure out how to get there, and then bring it to us. So I just want to be clear, I don't want to step on his toes and put a goal in place that says we're going to be hand in hand on doing the budget.
But I don't think that the growth strategy is the town managers, if it falls under the planning board.
No, I agree. I just want to be
exactly,
clear, we're clear on the budget.
Right, okay, yeah.
Because the way I see the growth strategy is that would be a kind of a tool that the planning board might look at and say, you know, we do need some zoning changes in order to implement that strategy. Not zoning changes for a particular application, but zoning changes in general, like they've done in the past in certain sectors, based on market information and so forth, that they would need to put in place so that by right, some of that type of business, commerce, or whatever might be attracted here.
The growth is still going to be controlled by the sewer, no matter what, though. We have to get the sewer situation squared away, or else we're not going anywhere.
And if we have the ability, they can put in local septic treatment within their property, then that's great.
But I think the context this is in terms of, and where it's come up recently, is in terms of warehouse space versus office space.
Right.
You know, and again, that's not sewer, it's not anything, it's really a question of the planning board's preference for development and what the community is looking for.
Right.
In terms of
Truck
type of
traffic.
jobs, truck traffic, type of, you know, industries and so forth. I think
When you put that list together of type of jobs, truck traffic, things like that, is appearance of buildings, you know, because like when you think of 129, I know there was a presentation to put a storage, whatever it was, right on 129,
By the
and
forum,
there was going to be nothing pretty about it. It was going to be basically a
they
silver
wanted a
box.
height variance, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, can that be part of your growth strategy, is to make it a appealing look? Because, you know, when you,
Well,
because
it was under the planning board's purview whether to grant that or not. Yeah, I mean, that's where they're allowed that discretion.
but
You
that
can obviously
wouldn't
modify it.
that wouldn't be one of the criteria of a growth strategy. Or
Well,
could it
couldn't they,
be?
within the zone, have, you know, building characteristics as some sort of a requirement within that zoning area?
I mean, you could, like, particularly in an historic area, you would.
Well, yeah, I know you
right,
can in
yeah,
a
yeah.
historic area, but if you identified the 129 corridor and you said, you know, whatever.
So how does the master plan work into this? I mean, master plan
Ideally, it
should
would.
have addressed
Should've.
some of this stuff, right?
Right.
They did.
And what's happening with that? I mean,
Well, we have the implementation committee that's supposed to be appointed by the planning board.
okay, is it?
Not yet.
I mean, we lose so much revenue by not having things down at 129. I mean, meals taxes and gas taxes and all that type of stuff. So, I mean, and we did spend a lot of time and a lot of money
It is?
a couple of years ago, pardon?
It's
Go
in there.
ahead, Paul.
That's what I thought.
Thank you. I just took a look at the special permit criteria in the zoning bylaws, and one of the things is social, economic, or community needs which are served by the proposal. So that would give the planning board the authority to actually look at the economic impact and base a decision, at least partially, upon that factor.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, George, what?
Oh, what I was saying, I mean, I don't like the aspect personally, but it's just my personal opinion. I don't like warehouse. I think the warehouse is again being controlled because we have no sewer capacity. And also, if we had more, more business, commercial business down there, we'd have that many more people, that much more people, and all the options, income options would be there. You have meals taxes, gas taxes, and people wouldn't be leaving. There may be some retail outlets down there, whatever. People be spending their money at lunchtime rather than going to Bellrecca or wherever. I don't know. I just think, we spent, 3 years, 2 years trying to rezone the whole thing, get special zoning. We bought a fire truck.
5 years.
100-footer or whatever, because we were going to go up 6 stories. And we did this and we did that, and all of a sudden now we're sitting here trying to figure out what our growth strategy is going to be. I don't know. Maybe I guess I just not that bright.
Well, I mean, just going back there, I mean, I think maybe the 40,000
Mike.
square foot office buildings were still in vogue. Well, they're not now. And that's why nobody's filling those spaces down there. So, I mean, what everyone's grappling with is, should I put a 60,000 square foot warehouse as opposed, because I'm never going to get that filled with offices. Doesn't work that way anymore. So what do we do with that space? And, it actually probably takes less water and sewer because of it, but it brings the trucks in. So there's always that back and forth. So the question is, how do we zone it? What do we let in? What don't we let in? How do we deal with this truck situation? Where should we deal with it versus other areas? And I mean, I think that's the fight on River Neck right now. But on 129, it's a little bit different. It's more aesthetics than, because it's right off the highway, as
So-
long as they're not coming through here.
I guess in the interest of time, what I'm taking away from this discussion is we don't have clarity to know how we would measure this right now. So is it another one where we need to allocate more time at a meeting
Yeah, 'cause there's
to discuss it?
It's a lot of people
Lot
with
of
good
variables.
information on
All
this
right. When do you want to have that discussion?
tomorrow.
An initial discussion, you want it next month? Is that too soon? This is just to talk about it
Just talk about it amongst the 6 of
amongst the
us.
6 of us and figure out what we want to do. I'm just,
Yeah, the end of
is it
September, end of
urgent
September?
that it's a
Well,
September
September's
thing? Or
more
Because
open,
who
right?
has a pulse? Right.
By then
I
we'll
think
have more
September.
legal
I think you're gonna
opinions,
do it.
and what
You
we
gotta
can
get
do is, if we can convert some of the other types
So,
of.
so start thinking about that and bring your questions or things you need answered to that meeting. Okay, critical goals. The last one were the things that we identified that we wanted to track. So, Warren poll, is that just like a status update as needed? Is it a quarterly report? What is it, Paul? I know you,
Is there an end date on
Yeah, I was
that?
gonna say, it shouldn't be quarterly, it shouldn't be done. I'm thinking,
Be an end
Update
date on
is
that,
needed.
Yeah.
yeah, I think you update as needed. I mean, I hope to have
Okay.
another one next month. I mean, we should, this thing isn't gonna go on forever.
okay.
Hoping it's sooner than later.
So I want to go there.
I would say fire station is probably the same because I don't know that they're ready to commit to a quarterly report or anything yet. They're still doing a lot of work. Do you agree, Paul?
Yeah.
Is that enough?
Yeah, I was looking
Is
at
that
the
okay with the board, or is there something else you would like to see?
On fire station.
Yeah, I'm going to say update is needed.
Yep.
Until that matures some more. Richardson Road, Paul, is that?
It's gotta be quarterly, because he's doing quarterly sampling. I mean, there's really, I think
So-
those are the check-in points. Every quarter, he's gonna come in and say, hey, these are the results we got. They just took samples last week. I imagine he'll be in September, and then goes on from there.
So minimum of quarterly
Yeah.
updates coincident with the sampling cycles? And then the town common?
Probably shouldn't be that hard.
Shouldn't be that hard, yeah. We should have that done,
Is that an update
6
as
months.
needed, or?
yeah,
Right with the
Or
same-
yeah, I would say you probably, I think should be done by the end of the calendar year, if we're looking, maybe something, bringing stuff to Springtown meeting, but,
At least the plan should be
yeah.
implemented.
But we're, I
Yeah,
mean,
I think once you get to the final plan, then it
Yeah.
becomes quarterly updates or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
once we
So
get
your
through it.
final recommendations by the end of the year, is that what
Yeah.
you're saying?
and then quarterly afterwards in terms of what we're doing.
All right, I will update what I think I heard and wrote down here for the next meeting, and you can take a look at it. Thank you, everyone. Okay, Paul, discussion items?
Okay, I'll try to be brief. I know we're 2 hours in, we've got more to go in the executive session. Again, these are, first item is senior citizen property tax relief. I have 2 memos in there, which are items that would go to fall town meeting. So again, there's no decision needed tonight, but I at least want to get the dialogue and information out there. The first one has to do with the senior citizen property tax work-off program that was established in this community in the 1990s. Just a quick overview for those who aren't familiar with it. Person has to be 60 or older to participate in the program. We pay them at the state's minimum wage, not to exceed the state's minimum wage, and under the state statute, they can earn a reduction of the property tax bill of $1,500 per year. And then, in fact, if you adopt another provision of the section, you could actually bump that up to $125 per year. If you do the math, 125 times the minimum wage, which keeps going up, it's actually $1,875. But recent history of this program, and back in 2008, we increased the amount of abatements under the program to $75,000 from $50,000. 7 years later, in 2015, we pushed that program funding up to $100,000. It gets funded from the property tax overlay, which is the amount set aside for exemptions and abatements, which falls under Proposition 2.5. Currently, as I said earlier, we pay them the state minimum wage, which is $14.25. The current program caps the earnings at $1,000, and you have over 100 seniors participate in the program. Some cases, depending upon COVID, non-COVID years, but you could be up to 125 or 130 in maximum level. But not everybody achieves the full end of the program in terms of achieving the number of hours and hitting the cap. Looking forward, the minimum wage is going up to $15 on January 1st this coming year. My recommendation is to eliminate the cap of the $100,000. You're not required under the statute, and this is the only community that I actually have been aware of that has a cap under the program. So my thought would be to go to town meeting, remove the cap of $100,000 with the intent that we would allow program participants, in light of the inflation and tax pressures in Massachusetts and in the community, to hit the $1,500 benchmark in the program from $1,000, which obviously provides it with another $500 of property tax relief. So basically, if you do the math, if you're at $15 minimum wage and you can earn $1,500, you'd work 100 hours of senior volunteer work under the program. If all that takes place, you're basically looking at additional $50,000 in funding under the program. Because right now, as I said, the cap is $100,000. If you figure there's roughly 100 people who do it, and now, again, there could be more, but they don't all max out, you're probably at $150,000. So the end result is we're putting an extra $50,000 of the town's $150 million budget into the overlay account to allow this program to work. So that's the elevator speech on the program. And
So you want to totally remove the cap, not change it?
yeah. Because the problem becomes administratively, in talking to Deb Sirianni, because they run the program out of the senior center, and this goes to George's point earlier about shutting the door to somebody. Well, again, if you've got 100 people participating and they're not all going to complete the number of hours, how do you know if you've got room for, a dozen or so more people?
101.
Yeah, exactly. So the idea would be if you eliminate the cap, you're going to be in the noise range outside of that. So And obviously, we'd be aware of the program. If 400 people signed up for it, we would, we'd say, hey, look, because we don't means test the program. That's one thing we don't do in Chelmsford. It's not a program that we, somebody has to come in and, provide their income tax, oh, I'm eligible to participate in the program, that type of thing. It's for seniors age 60 or older. So I think the idea is removing the cap, and obviously we'll report, because it's data tracked annually, this is what the program did. And I can tell you in talking to Frank Green, and because again, it all goes through the property tax bills and goes through accounting, we're at the cusp of the $100,000 funding level. And so what ends up happening is two things. One is you shut the door to people, but also you end up reducing the number of hours, because if your minimum wage is going up but your cap is solid, you're then reducing it from 100 hours down to 95, because so that's how it works. So I think in the spirit of the program, and again, trying to provide relief for seniors, to remove the cap. Obviously, we'll report it annually. It's on Darlene, financials every year, and do the program that way. And again, provide a means that, again, we know is manageable based on a 30-year history of type of people and type of The other thing is we may not have more than 120 positions to do in the town anyway. We allow them to go to the library, the senior center, police station. There's only so much we can do. So I think that's the intent under this program. So it appears to be a measured step that is for a very popular program that is manageable, that's not going to create havoc to the town's finances.
So it's not capped from a budget perspective, it's capped from a need perspective.
Yeah, basically, yeah. Yeah.
And if we have needs, then it's
right.
open.
Yeah, and again, many people speak so highly of the work that this does. It does support, operations in the assessor's office, collector's office, as you said, the library, senior center, and so forth. So it's providing services in the community. So it's not, it's not just a money program that we're running out money. It's a program that's actually providing service to the community to help take on projects and do good things in the town. And I can tell you that program participants get more out of it than just the money as well. I mean, there's really, many people really look forward to coming in and working and assisting and being part of, their particular area where they're working.
And a lot of them do more than the 100.
Yeah, some of them, yeah, exactly.
25 hours, yeah.
So anyway, so that's, you go ahead.
Earlier when we were doing goals, George had brought up, who does it from year to year. So have we been in a situation where we're turning people away?
I mean, in speaking to Deb Sirianni, she has had situations where they didn't have a position or an opportunity. I think more turning people away because we don't have the work for them to do, as opposed to turning somebody away because
you reach a cap.
Because we reached a cap.
Yeah, so that's really the cap.
Exactly. And now coming out of COVID, we expect it will increase a little bit more, because when you had COVID years, one is people didn't want to necessarily participate in the program, and the other part is some of your services were curtailed at the library and other places. So hopefully that we're moving beyond that. So again, it's a very popular program. We think it's something, again, that would be beneficial to seniors in the community. And again, helps keep pace with inflation and so forth. And then the second one was the one that Frank Green mentioned about the elderly exemption, what's known as the Chapter 59, Section 5, Clause 4C exemption, which is currently $500. And this really provides relief to the neediest in the community, because the income thresholds and asset thresholds are so constrained that, and I'll just highlight them real quickly, and I had Frank review this to make sure my numbers were accurate, but you have to be age 65 or older. You obviously have to provide evidence that you own and occupied, a residence in the community, and that's by turning in income tax returns, banks, and other asset account statements to the assessors. And one of the criteria is you must have lived in Massachusetts for the past 10 years and own and occupy the property in Massachusetts for the last 5 years, for any 5 years of those 10. So you have to have been a last 10-year Massachusetts residence, and within that last 10 years owned a property for 5 years. The income limits are really strict. Single is $30,216, married is $45,321, and the asset limit excluding the home is $40,000 for a single person and $55,000 for a married person. This was adopted by this provision of state law. Local acceptance was done back in May of '89. Since 2016, the number of participants in the program has diminished from 62 to 41. So if you figure there's 40 people eligible and you're increasing an additional $500, again, you're looking at a $20,000 cost to really serve the most needy who are really in a tough constraint, to keep them in the community, to help keep them in the community. So that's why this was brought forward and mentioned by Frank, and sort of asked to flush this out and bring it. And obviously, the end result would be it would have to be accepted at town meeting to make it effective.
So this is an all or nothing, right? I mean, it wouldn't be that they get $500 if they're not quite at that income level?
Yeah, you either qualify or you don't qualify.
Okay,
Yeah,
so-
this is all or nothing. You're either eligible for the exemption or you're not. And so that's, so that's how this program works. So it's really, as you can see, it's really, if you've got 36,000 people in town, you're impacting 40. So that just shows you how constrained, again, go to the adult population of seniors, which we know is a good part of the community. It's still a very small percentile. It's really providing assistance to those who are needy, and it's a $20,000 impact on the again, the overlay and exemptions and abatements. for
And
the
the number probably decreased because their income or their assets increased so they weren't no longer
Yeah,
eligible?
exactly.
Otherwise,
Right.
it would be silly to stop getting it if you could.
Mhm. Right. And the question becomes,
So
well,
you're talking basically between the two of these about another $75,000 that gets spread out amongst
Right.
the rest of the taxpayers.
right, exactly. And then sort of leads to the next question, well, aren't there other programs that could provide broader relief? Well, the problem is, as you said, you start opening up to broader relief or some kind of a home rule petition, everything else, then you're right, that burden then has to be picked up by every other taxpayer in town, and you have to have some means to predict and regulate, because there are other provisions of state law for exemptions, but, again, now you're talking tax shift as opposed to tax relief, and then that's a whole nother discussion, which people can wade into, but that's becoming a major lift at that point. So I don't want to give the impression that this is the only form of assistance that can be done under state statute. There are other provisions. It's just when you start going above this and start raising the levels and so forth, you're now talking, some significant numbers
So
would
that's like
be a greater challenge.
So if $1 million is a $74 impact,
Yeah.
what is this? Is like $7? Is that?
Yeah, but it doesn't increase our levy limit, so it doesn't actually, we're still under the same tax cap.
You're shifting it. So how
What
much
are
is
you-
shifted?
How much are you shifting to the other? How much does my tax bill go up?
Yeah.
Is what people are going to want to know.
Well,
41 cents a month?
yeah, it's not much or anything, right. And if you-
$7 a
yeah,
year?
right.
$8 a year
Probably not
between the
even
two of
And if
them?
you assume we would spend that 70,000 somewhere else, it's not going to go up anything at all. It's just going
Oh,
to,
I
I'm
know.
just being cynical.
Which, I see why, I know why.
I'm just saying, if you look, what it is basically, it's the set aside. When you start looking at, what's available for expenditure, these amounts would be included in the amount set aside for abatements and exemption, which actually is approved and monitored every year, not only internally, but by the Massachusetts Department of Revenue. So it's not, we just can't say, oh, we're not going to fund that account, and run it. You can't run a deficit. They can.
Okay. Any other discussion?
Thank you.
No, we're not doing any action on this.
No, not actually any action this evening. I'm just
I
trying to
guess
give you early insight and early discussion.
Right.
about this.
Is there any feedback for Paul?
I mean, any thoughts? It came in kind of quick. I mean, we just discussed this a couple weeks ago, and here it is.
Well, one
Yeah.
week ago.
Right.
Right.
And again, we're not town meeting wouldn't act on this for 2 months, so again, we wouldn't ask for a recommendation by this board if it's, for town meeting until October, so we're not.
Was it
Would
really
this
last
be a
week?
fall town meeting, or?
Yeah, it could be a
is
fall
this
town meeting.
Is this a spring town meeting where they do
No,
the
I think you'd want to do it for
financials?
fall, because the program, the senior work program, you want to get into that cycle, so I think I'm thinking fall town meeting. Because otherwise you're gonna miss another tax year. Because remember, these abatements come off of the third and fourth quarter property tax bills, yeah.
I didn't even think of that, but you're right, it was last Monday. Were you-
Yeah, it was a
this
week- it
like
was
on
a
your
week
radar?
ago.
Like-
It was on my radar. I was looking at the senior property tax work-off well before last Monday. The one that Frank introduced was not on my radar. So I quickly sat down with him and we went over those numbers. But I was looking at the senior work program because if you noticed, it had been 7 years since we last adjusted it and 7 years prior to that. So it was sort of like the 7-year itch, but hey, it's time to look at this program again. Because, again, what I was seeing is the minimum wage was going up, and we're coming out of COVID, and it just seemed like we're constraining people at $1,000 when we could go to the 1,500 level.
Okay.
So Paul, next up is the hydrant, and Lori is still in the Zoom room, Lori Pellegrino. Ken, you came to me with this, and to
Sure,
Paul,
yeah,
so
no,
I'm
I'll-
going to let you introduce it.
I mean, Lori told everybody her street address. She lives one street over from me. And the morning after the fire, I was out with my son walking the dog, and she stopped me, and the water department was there, and I was like, what happened? And so I, got the update from her, and I also remember the fire on Boardwalk years ago where they had a similar situation where there was 3 hydrants down and no water. And the fire department was lugging hoses down the roads because the trucks had already pulled over and sort of unloaded hoses, and now they were like, do we use a truck to pull? And it just took a little while to get water on the fire. But so it just kind of, I don't know. I said, well, this is a fire issue, fire safety issue, which is where I thought we were going with it. But so that's how that started.
So I had asked Paul to reach out to the water department, and the response we got is in the packet. And I put this on the agenda because I wanted to just have a discussion with the board, one about how you wanted to handle this specific request, but is there a broader discussion, and Chief Ryan's in the Zoom room too, I should have acknowledged that. Is there a broader discussion to be had with respect to the fire hydrants in the water districts, or is there any outreach that we want to be doing as a town or as a board?
I mean, I think there should be some outreach, and I read the letter they sent back, and maybe I don't know how else you would have done it, but I don't know what the solution is, because we can't all go parading into a water department meeting, but so I don't know.
Well, maybe we should ask Chief Ryan how he feels it impacts the operation of the fire department.
Okay.
I mean,
They usually flush out most of at least once a year, so I mean, I'm sure that sometime when they flush it out, it had to be.
I think that's part of the conversation.
Go ahead, Chief.
The schedule, which ones, all that, I mean, that's.
Chief, you there?
Good evening, Mr. Manager, board members, Madam Chair. As far as the July 5th fire, I mean, there was a hydrant. The very first hydrant they hooked into was leaking. It was still, and this is important, it was still operational. But because of, they did have a little concern over it, so they went to the next hydrant. That hydrant wasn't working. And they ended up going to a third hydrant. The hydrant, the very next day, we had a conversation with the water commissioner, and as expected, they addressed it right away. And I'm sure board member LaFave probably saw them out there. Whenever we call them, they are very responsive. My recommendation to this board would be to have this conversation offline. I believe Select Member Burgess is the liaison. I would be happy to join her and others. But quite frankly, I don't see where the wider safety issue is. If there was, I would certainly be involved, and I would certainly bring it up and address it. When I got the manager's email the next day, the water department was already on site. So that would be my recommendation to this board, to maybe kind of have this discussion, if this is your concern, off-site. I think it would be more productive. Thank you.
particular reason you want it off-site, Gary? I mean, because we don't want the public to think we're hiding something from them. I have all the confidence in the world in all the water departments and the fire department. This is just something this is something.
I just think it could be more productive if there's some concerns I'm not aware of. I mean, outside of this one incident, there's 1,500, just in the center district, 1,500 hydrants. Yes, it will be an issue from time to time. But whenever it comes to my attention, my experience with the water department, center water department, in the north, in the east, they are very responsive. We had a hydrant hit on Friday. East Chelmsford Water District was out there right away addressing the issue because we called them. So if there are other issues I'm unaware of, and I'm concerned too because I think by having it as an agenda item, people think we have a widespread issue. I don't see that. So that is my recommendation. If not, I would be happy to attend, the Water Commissioner's invitation for his meeting on the 17th.
So, Chief, I again, appreciate your comments. I guess what we're trying to do is make sure it's not a widespread issue. We don't have a lot of fires in town.
Right.
You don't know there's a problem until there's a problem.
Correct.
We don't want there to be a problem.
Right.
And again, maybe I don't know of all the fires in town, so maybe I'm just selective remembering, but I also remember the fire on Boardwalk where, and I don't know if you remember that one.
I do.
But again, it was a hydrant. And those are the only two major ones I know of, so that's what I'm pulling from. So if that's not enough, I get it, and I apologize for that. But I just want to make sure there's not a problem.
Experience.
Yeah, I just want to make sure there's not a problem, because you don't want it to be a problem when you're going to need it most.
Certainly, I share that.
And I don't want to step on the
Yeah,
water department's toes, and my goal was not to drag them out here tonight and try to embarrass anybody. I just want to make sure we don't have a problem. And I'm not just at any water department, not just them, so.
And I can say from, since, Andy Reid has taken over as commissioner and Bob Delaney before him, I've had very productive and good working relationships with them. I've met them. Andy in particular will actually meet me out in the field if there's an issue with the hydrant. He's very hands-on. They have a very robust and effective testing program. I mean, I'll let them speak to that. But certainly, I don't see, when this brought up, I was concerned as well as they are because I don't see the concern, the widespread concern. And certainly when we do have an issue, I think what's most important is the effectiveness, their response, and how quickly they address issues. And I say that Lord Andy Reid, certainly up in North Chelmsford, have a good working relationship with them, and also East Chelmsford with Bob Conboy.
So, Chief, when you have an issue, when you say when we have an issue,
Correct.
so there are issues that come up through. Are you talking about when you have an issue when there's a fire and you discover there's an issue, or issues that are discovered through like proactive maintenance and testing?
Could be both. So Friday I was called from a resident that the hydrant on Brickham Road outside the Middlesex Sheriff's Department was hit. By the time I made notification to the water department, they were already there. They were working on it. And they heard that from dispatch. So a lot of the times, if there's damage to a hydrant, people will reach out to the 911 dispatch center, and they will make direct outreach to the appropriate water district. And certainly when we have a fire, it's our practice with any of the water districts to notify them what hydrant we use, even if there's no issues, because they will come out there and just check it and service it.
Okay, so
All right,
where would
so-
you like to go from here?
I guess I'm looking for guidance. How do you want to, I know two of us can go to the meeting. I won't be around Friday, but.
I'm not available.
No, I plan to be there.
The 17th? I can go if it's...
Okay. So we would have Mark and Pat go, and Chief would join them?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Okay. Next up, we have the closure on the performance review for Paul and the compensation discussion. So, I mean, the action from the last meeting was Paul was going to talk to Ken and George about their inputs. I know you guys both looked at it and had discussions with Paul. And what I did is put in the final packet what the final review form is based on that, plus the backup from both of you.
Well, I crossed one line out on my thing. I'm happy with what I did. I'm not happy with what I did, but I did what I thought was right. And I crossed one line out, and I called Paul and told him. And so I'm okay. I'm content with what I put down, and I talked to Paul about it.
Paul and I had a conversation that lasted about an hour after the meeting. I took notes from what Paul had given to me, and I then took another blank report and went, evaluation, went through it again. I arrived at the same spot. So I'd sent Paul an email saying I was going to keep it as is, but looking to work harder this year to kind of go over these issues that we talked about and addressed in that hour.
Okay. Is there anything else you want to say, Paul?
No.
Before? Okay. So we have to come to closure on an overall rating. Any discussion?
I stand by what I said at our last meeting. I think Paul does a very good job, and we're lucky to have him here, and he's done a good job in the past year where this review is meant to cover. So, I mean, I would give him at least a 4 for the overall rating.
Should we just go around, Mark?
Yeah, I mean, I've written my review. What else to say about it?
Okay.
I don't know what to add.
Do you have anything else to add, George?
No.
I gave my rating as a 3, and I explained why in the review. I don't really feel comfortable going much higher than that, because I feel that while we achieved the objectives and the goals, I think some of it was rough getting there, and there are just areas in the town that I think have come to light that are manifesting themselves now because of past decisions that were made in terms of the sewer, and the impacts that has on the whole community. The other area example was the road pavement. And I understand we're taking action on that now, but it seems that was something that has just been festering for years, and we just, for whatever reason, we didn't make decisions to do things differently. And I think a lot of the hard effort this year, too, included catching up on 3 objectives that were just not addressed the year before. So that's why I landed at a 3.
So where do we go from here?
We need to decide on what the rating is. Everybody seems to be standing behind their number. I personally don't feel that it was a 4-year.
Personally, what? I'm
I
sorry.
don't feel that it was a 4-year. I'm not comfortable with that.
Well, last year we settled on a 3.5.
We did because of COVID.
I mean, I don't think this year should be less than that.
Last year, when we went to 3.5, the discussion was around the extenuating circumstances of it being a COVID year.
Last year, we added 2 or 3 because you asked, we didn't ask 2 or 3. 2.3 tenths, not a full point. You said, well, can we make it higher? You asked, we did it. I'm not saying it was, we did it, I'm just saying that somehow.
Do we want a motion?
What does it come out to if you add them up and divide?
Well, you're not supposed to do that, but
Right.
I don't know what it comes out to. I didn't do that. I'm sure somebody has done that already.
3.18. I think.
So it comes out at a 3.
Is that what? I'm sorry?
In my opinion, I would call it a 3,
Right.
if that's what you want to do.
Is somebody going to make a motion? I mean, I'll make a motion that we do an overall rating of 3.5.
I'll second it.
I'm not comfortable with it, but I'll take a vote. Is there any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So that failed. I'm really not comfortable going higher than a 3. I don't think it was a 3.5 or a 4-year. I think there was just too many other challenges that we dealt with this year. So that's, and we didn't have the COVID extenuating circumstance.
I mean, I'm kind of surprised that with the ratings because from my seat, looking at it, we had a couple major issues that came to light, and those conversations in our meetings got heated. So I was surprised on that, but.
Do we have another motion? I would make a motion to provide an overall rating of a 3.
I'll second.
All those in favor? Opposed? That one carries 4-1.
So for the 3 meetings meets expectations of the position, just for
Correct.
people clear. Okay.
So this also includes compensation, and I think it would be unreasonable to not give Paul a raise since he did not get one last year.
I personally think the position deserved one last year, and I think it deserves one this year.
The the non-union personnel cost of living increase was 2%?
For each of the last 2 fiscal years, yes.
I'm not gonna vote for the raise, either of you. If you recall, I was the third vote that gave 14% raise, when you got the 14% raise. I don't have a problem giving anybody a raise. There's some things I'd like to see changed, and when they get changed, I'll vote again. But we have 8 sergeants that haven't got paid in 7 years.
And that's my fault, George?
Well, I don't know whose fault it is, Paul. I think everybody involved is partially to blame. I mean, I gotta blame somebody. I don't know who to blame. But I would like to get it resolved. I think it's...
And I've made efforts to get it resolved, haven't I, George?
You what?
I've made efforts to get it resolved at the direction of the board, haven't I? But I can't settle a contract by myself.
Well, I don't want to disclose what was said at a couple of meetings I was involved in, and with you, and you know, I thought it was done a couple times, and you know, I just don't think it's fair. But we'll wait and see.
But George,
listen, I might be the only guy. Maybe I'm a bad guy. You know, it's because everybody needs better. Somebody sits down there making almost $90,000 a year, comes and goes the way they want to, and they want to criticize me. They want to give up their job and come to, you know, and volunteer for 14 years. Let them come and do it. Anybody want us to be critical? I love the town of Chelmsford. I don't dislike anybody. Nobody. I just have to do what I think is right, and I think that's right this time.
But George,
nobody criticized me when I got criticized by a lot of people when I gave 14% raise. You didn't want to vote it. You didn't want to vote it that night. I voted for it.
Can we go, look, if I may, Madam Chair, a couple things in this. The 14% raise was a raise, an effort initiated by the Select Board. Glenn Diggs was chair by looking at the market survey of positions. You did that for Darlene and for me.
I know the story behind it.
So all right, so I didn't come in here and say I want a 14% raise.
I didn't say
okay,
you
so I just want to make it clear.
You said you wanted a raise because you were the senior man in the area, and you were the senior statesman in the area.
No.
And you thought you should have gotten more because...
No. These are all on videotape. What was said, and Pat can be my witness, she was here. Every year, Pat, I took the percentage that was provided to the non-union employees.
Ken was here too.
Well, Ken, not the full duration that Pat and George were here.
Ken was not for it either.
But I'm just want to say what's happened in the years that just 2 senior members have been on the board. I took the same COLA that was provided for every employee of this town. I never asked for more. And I never asked at that time for more either. That was an effort initiated by Select Person Diggs by this board. So it wasn't as though I came to the board and said, I'm not getting paid enough.
But then why did we argue in there for an hour and a half that night? And it was like 12:30 when we got out of there at night. If you didn't want the 14, you could have said no. And I said, give it to him. And you said, oh, I said, no, I don't mean it like that. I said, give it to him.
And the reason for that, George, was because I had fallen behind the comparable pay of my peers. Which situation exists today, if you do the comparable analysis. And in fact, if you post the position that I employed today, you would pay and offer more than you were offering me today at 15 years on the job. And I'm not asking for anything, but let's just call facts as the facts. And the only other point that I'll finish, George, the only other point that I'll make, when the contract settles, because it's going to settle with the police sergeants, they will get their money retroactive. How would you propose that I receive money retroactive, since I'm not a unionized employee of the town?
Maybe give them another 14% raise, I don't know.
But they get it retroactive, George, so it doesn't just start at one point in time, 14%. It goes back to, it's going to go back to this point, and it's going to go year to year compounding till whenever it's settled. I mean, so it's not apples and oranges, George.
I sit up here and I take my job seriously. Again, I don't dislike anybody. And then somebody accuses me of because I'm a friend of somebody, I'm doing them a favor. I didn't ask that person who they worked for. They're talking about, you know, Who do
Hey,
they
George.
work for and make almost 90 grand a year?
Hey, George, I didn't ask anybody
I
anything
didn't
either.
say you did, Paul, that's not my point.
Right. But my point is, I've
Try to
now...
say, all I think is, I'm trying to be I've been here, this is my 14th year,
Yep.
all right? People want me out of here, take me out of here. She wants to give up her job and come work for me, that's fine with me.
That has nothing to do with me, George, what people say. What I will point out to this board is, I've received positive performance appraisals that met the expectations of the position now for 2 fiscal years. And for the last fiscal year, I received no additional compensation. In addition to that, I also did not receive a vehicle allowance or a vehicle from this community. Many people in this community who are employed by this community in management positions receive a vehicle or a vehicle allowance. And the position that I hold in any other community that I know of receives either a vehicle or a vehicle allowance. And last year, the board did neither for me. So it wasn't that they just didn't receive a pay increase last year, I also didn't receive a vehicle or a vehicle allowance. So those are 2 things that you can see that I don't think are appropriate, because again, if I leave here tomorrow, the next person who comes into this job is going to get either a vehicle or a vehicle allowance, and they're going to get a pay rate that will be advertised at or above what I'm receiving. I would anticipate, because you're going to ask what the market is, and you see the market by what's being posted out there. And I just don't think that that's appropriate and fair for one that by this board has been deemed to have met the expectations of the position for 2 fiscal years. And I've waited for this board. You last had an executive session regarding my contract, which is a different matter, over 13 months ago. And nothing happened in that time. And so here I am now in August of 2022, having received a positive performance appraisal from this board for 2 fiscal years, and then I'm not supposed to take it personally? How else am I supposed to take it? When this board has voted that I've met the expectations of the position in as its ruling, and has excluded me from a pay increase that's been provided to every other non-union and those union employees that have contracts settled in this community.
You know,
And also, I don't receive a vehicle allowance.
That everybody should get 2% if they're non-union every year. I mean, every year, they get a 2%. I mean, I don't, I mean, most people probably deserve it, but some don't. Then they get an additional 2% or 2.5%
They're at a
or
step.
whatever.
And I don't get that, George. I don't get any steps.
I didn't say you did, Paul. I'm
So I'm
talking
just-
about, I said,
yeah.
I didn't agree with the whole process.
Well, that's the process that's been in this community and in other
I mean,
communities
that's why we're
long
in
before
trouble
I got here.
financially, too.
I didn't realize we were in trouble financially.
Well, you said we were gonna be.
Now, what I said is we've got challenges, George.
We certainly do. And not,
Like every
and
community.
not- I didn't say that you're all to blame for all of them either. I never said that. I'm just telling you what I voted. I'm
No,
only one
I
vote.
understand it, George. But you're the only one who's spoken, and therefore I'm
Oh, I'm
responding to
sorry,
your
but I
concerns.
mean, I gotta say what's on my mind.
George,
because
I
that's who
respect-
I am.
and
I'm not
George-
gonna bullshit anybody.
Exactly, and George, you and I have been able to, and always been able to talk to each other, and we're still doing that today. Exactly, and therefore I don't take offense to your position or your thing, but I also hope that you respect where I'm coming from.
I have no problem with that, Paul. I just-
Paul, in your talk you just gave, you said you weren't asking for anything, but you are.
I've never asked anything beyond what everybody else got, Ken, because I've tried to be as a member of the team and be a leader of this team, and I've never put myself before anybody else in this community. But on the other hand, I shouldn't be walked over either and taken advantage of. I mean, I've got the same constraints any other person in my position would have, or anybody employee. You know, I'm affected by inflation. I've got kids in college and in school and everything else. You know, and I've worked hard for this community. And it really bothers me when it just seems that the negative things get pointed out and the good things kind of get glossed over, or somehow I assume blame for everything. You know, we use the word "we," but then it's also, sometimes the word is directed to me. And Virginia, you and I disagree. I don't think there's a crisis in our roads, and every year we've had a road plan, we've got a capital plan and so forth, and yes, there's work that needs to be done. But the bottom line, what people fail to realize is when I arrived here, we had a facilities crisis. And yes, maybe we didn't invest enough that we would have liked to have had in the roads, but the goal was we were coming off of the failed school votes and the improvements in the schools. And if you think the taxes are darn tough now, imagine what it would be if we were paying to finance a new school.
So we directed our efforts in terms of facilities, in terms of the schools, in terms of the buildings, and also in terms of the apparatus and other equipment for this town that was sorely lacking. And just go back to 2007, look at the condition of that center fire station. It was on wooden stilts, and the age of the apparatus, and a number of the other things that we were able to accomplish as a community. And so, yes, maybe we didn't put as much money in the roads as we would have liked, but I don't think it was to the point of neglect. I think it was a point of, look, you've got limited resources, and therefore I think the priority and the allocation wasn't just by me. All I do is put the ball in play. It was actions that were recommended by the Finance Committee, recommended and supported by the Select Board, and recommended and supported by town meeting.
Who was
and
the
the
hardest
Capital Planning
worker on the Board of
Committee.
Selectmen for that with you? Me.
We've had, George, you're a hard worker, we've had a lot of hard workers on, and still do have hard workers on the Select Board. I'm not arguing that, but, you know, somehow I've become the villain for the sewer crisis in the town. Yeah, I was the manager, I'll agree with it, but the sewer crisis in this town was known as far back as 2003, when they knowingly got special legislation adopted to develop a special fund to meet sewer capacity, and knowingly went forward and sewered the entire town, knowing that they didn't have capacity to sewer the entire town. And it all came home to roost in 2017, when there was mixed-use development, residential development, which you remember was in the wake of trying to overcome 40Bs, the town's exposure to 40Bs, and the impact that was having to neighborhoods and the uncontrol in the community on a sewer system that was first come, first serve. So we couldn't even have stopped those projects even if we wanted to, because there was sewer capacity. But yet,
We're going to get it resolved. We're going to get
It's
some
resolved.
legal advice.
Exactly.
You've got an enterprise fund there.
Exactly.
You've got a lot of things. Maybe we're going to get it resolved.
Exactly.
Maybe we'll get a big developer to come in here and do their own plant like they're doing over in Chelmsford.
Maybe, right. But it's still bringing it back to the issue at hand. This board has voted for this past fiscal year and the fiscal year prior to that I met the expectations of the position, and I'm sitting here at this moment without a vote by this board to adjust my compensation to address the vehicle issue, which I just think is not fair to me. And I also sincerely say, you're not only damaging me, you're damaging the reputation of this community and how it's being perceived by others. And I'm not, I just hope you realize that.
Anyone else?
I think the reason that there was a 14% raise, this is before my time, and I did say I think, part of it was equity, because the position had slid below the peer group, and that's because of degradation over time. And if we continue to allow, I'm not talking about Mr. Cohen, I'm talking about the position. If the position keeps sliding backwards, he's exactly right. You know, if he decides to retire, leave, whatever, and we have to replace it, it's just going to be that much higher that we're going to have to pay, because that is the rate. And if somebody in that role meets expectations, I think we have an obligation as a board to keep him whole and to keep the position whole. And I do think it hurts our reputation. I know it certainly would hurt our reputation when I was in private sector. And it would be much more difficult to attract good candidates to fill a role. And again, if Paul were to leave, retire, whatever, it would be that much more difficult to bring somebody in when they see the way that the predecessor was treated. And I think we have to be careful about that.
Anyone else?
I've said what I had to say. I think he definitely deserves a raise. If nobody else will make a motion, I'll make one.
I'll make a motion that he gets 2% for last year and 2% for this year.
I'll second.
So why don't we discuss that?
We had that vote, didn't you?
Hmm?
You already had that vote. I
No,
thought that
it
we
hasn't been moved.
Pardon?
There was no
Wasn't a
motion.
motion.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I just,
I am comfortable with the COLA for this year. I don't know how much I want to keep revisiting last year. The car allowance, I think, is something that was part of the contract, and we're right in a situation right now where we don't have a contract.
we got to take a vote.
Well, I am. This is
Discussion.
discussion period after the motion. Can I provide my,
Motion in a second.
yeah, and then we say, is there discussion, and I'm having
There was-
discussion.
Okay, but there was no motion for car allowance.
Okay, then I'll put that aside. So that's my point. Ken, do you have any discussion point?
Well, I mean, I'm listening to these arguments and I'm torn because I see both sides of this, and everything that's been said. And I know at my office, even the minimum performers got 2% just because of what's happened with inflation.
Yep. I'm not sure, did we even take a vote last year?
No.
We didn't. So the 4%, you're just trying to bring them up to the COLA, the 2 COLA increases, basically?
Well, Mark made the motion, but yeah.
Yep. He was a 3.5 last year, he was a 3 this year.
Mhm.
I think deserves the 2% from last year, and I think he deserves the 2% this year. Just, it's pretty minimal.
Yep.
I mean, this isn't a big raise.
Any other discussion? No? Okay, all those in favor? I'll vote in favor. Opposed? Are you opposed?
Opposed.
Okay, 3-2. Passes. Any other discussion on this topic? Okay. Bid awards?
Yeah, members of the board, I have 3 bid awards for your approval this evening. These all come from Public Works. First one is for the Chelmsford Forum Electrical Service Installation, requesting the board's confirmation of the bid award to Pine Ridge Technologies out of North Reading, Mass. For the price of $67,103.
Have we ever had experience with these guys
They
before?
did check reference, background checked, everything on that, so that's
Okay,
fine.
but they've never worked for us?
No,
Okay.
no. Want to do them one at a time?
How many bids did we get?
We had 2 bids on this, and you can see how close they were. One was 67,103, and the other one was
How close they
67,676, yeah.
Okay, any other questions or discussion?
I'll make a motion to award the bid for the Chelmsford Forum Electrical Service Installation of Pine Ridge Technologies out of North Reading, Mass. in the amount of $67,103.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
5-0.
The next item is catch basin and street cleaning debris removal. The bid award is recommended to WL French. There were 2 bids received. Their bid price was $43.95 per ton, which comes out to a projected total of just over $70,320. And that's a company that had the bid for the prior year, so we have direct experience with them and no issues in the past year.
I'll make a motion that we approve the bid award for catch basin cleaning and debris removal to WL French.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Abstentions? 4 in favor, 1 abstention.
Thank you. And then the third one is for center school playground site work. You see there were 4 bids received. The low bid was DeMello Construction Services. The bid price was $38,950.
Sorry, I just took it off the screen, but
It's in between the two of them.
Oh, I got it, it's out of order.
I inadvertently closed the window, so go ahead and make a motion.
I'll make a motion that we award the center school playground site work and landscaping bid to DeMello Construction Services in the amount of $38,950.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 5-0.
Thank you.
Town manager reports?
Yeah, a few of them, I'll try to be brief. I recognize the hour was late. Just real quickly, the governor signed the state budget since we last met. The 3 earmarks for Chelmsford made it through and were approved in the budget process. So that's $100,000 for the Chelmsford Center for the Arts for energy efficiency improvements that are not powered by on-site combustion, which basically green energy efficiency improvements. $100,000 for preliminary design of transportation improvements to Vinyl Square, and $25,000 for food insecurity and nutrition programs at the Chelmsford Senior Center.
Paul, what's the current status of the economic bill? Where we asked for another?
In limbo. That was the one that got derailed by the revenue surplus that requires the vote to go back to the taxpayers of the Commonwealth. So when the legislature finished their formal sessions on early morning of August 1st, that was left uncompleted. It's unclear where that will go because of it. There's been discussion that they may take bits and pieces of it in informal session. The challenge with informal session is if one legislator objects, then it can't move forward. And the only other choice the legislature would have would be to call a special session, which they have not done in recent memory. So at this, and the reason they were concerned was that if they had passed the bill, the governor would not only have provided that, but then he would have also triggered in this income tax rebate. And there were some, particularly in the House leadership, that didn't think the Commonwealth had that type of revenue at this time. So those other items are right now in limbo. And if nothing happens by the end of the session, everything will have to start over with the new legislature in January.
Okay.
Next item is the treatment of weeds in Freeman Lake. As you see in the handout, basically the Conservation Commission approved the work. That decision was appealed to the DEP. It's now been our second week, and the DEP has not made any action on. They have 30 days from the date of the appeal to request additional information. We're not aware of any additional information that's been requested. They then have 70 days to issue a superseding order of conditions. The bottom line is we're about 3 weeks from closing the lifeguards in the lake down with the start of school, so it appears that the lake treatment will not take place this year, but we intend to see this process through so that we can get at it early next season when the ice melts and treat Freeman Lake. So that's where it stands at this point.
So there's a question on this.
Yeah.
When this went through town meeting last year, we agreed not only to do Freeman as a
And Hart
call
Pond.
out, we did Hart. So
Yeah.
now Hart got theirs.
Hart got theirs treated again, and Hart's been treated for years.
Right, and now we
They
picked
used
up
to
the
pay
cost.
for it though over there.
Yes, exactly, yeah. So we
Right.
now picked up the entire cost at Hart Pond.
Where before it was the residents.
It was a shared cost with the pond association, right? So that's where the treatment of weeds at Freeman Lake goes. July sewer flows, real quickly, you've got the data. I think the most striking number is this July from last July, which I think are probably two polar extremes. This July, the flow was 67.37. Last July was 85.79. That's a over 21% decrease, which you can't attribute that to COVID. It obviously shows that there's got to be some inflow into the system. And if you look at the other years, 21 and 20, you're down by 8.7% from 21 and 14% from 20. So again, and this is part of our goals, and we'll talk about it, and I've talked about it with Christine Clancy, our Public Works Director, we probably will look to do some type of a program to encourage and try to facilitate some better means if there is in fact this sump pump issue or other infiltration. But, obviously no system is water tight, but the numbers are just staggering. So, and then if you look through the data, interestingly, obviously the 67.37 is not much lower than the dry June we have, where it was 69.18. But then if you even go look at that June, you go back a couple Junes prior to that, you can see that was 87 in a previous June. So it's obviously it's weather dependent, which we know, but it's severe. So
If you deconstruct that number
Yeah.
by pump station elevation to proximity to the water table and so forth, has that been looked at?
yeah, we don't think it's the pump station itself. We think it's basically
No, not
No,
the
what he's saying
station
is go
itself.
backwards from the pump station to
So
the
you
houses.
can see where the
Yeah.
flows are really.
That would be hard. We're not opposed to it. We're looking at that, Mark, because we have meters at the main locations, into the system, both what they come in from Tingsboro and then where we go out to Lowell and so forth.
But if you're looking for II or you're looking
Right.
for sump pumps,
Right.
that will start to direct you
Right.
into an area.
Right, exactly. So
There's some areas in town that typically aren't going to have
Exactly.
a sump pump problem.
Exactly. We're not
There's other
see-
areas that do.
My
exactly.
neighborhood would have a sub pump problem.
Exactly, because we're not seeing it in Drum Hill, for example,
Exactly.
because that's commercial. So anyway, we're trying to look at it, and again, if you think about water meters, which again, not everything that goes through the water meter goes into the sewer. We know that, particularly if you're doing irrigation outside. So you're right, we're trying to,
Yeah, but how does that help?
because it at least gives you some idea of what kind of consumption is, but we're trying to look at pieces of data that we have.
Yeah, I don't know how water meters.
Because
you
water
don't
meters
track
at
it
least
out.
tell you what's going
Water
through
in,
it.
not out.
Yeah, watering outside, you would think this year would have been higher because you're watering outside, it's not raining, but yet your flow is lower.
Well, August should be interesting if it continues not to rain,
Yeah,
because there's a water ban on too, so.
exactly.
Do you have,
Go ahead.
you're talking about areas where there's sump pumps, is that an assumption, or do people have to file something with the town when they get a sump pump?
No.
So you have no idea
We
where
have
the
no
sump
idea.
pumps really are?
Well, I mean,
Yeah, we have-
you
we
say
have
that,
a
but like
sense,
in
like-
my neighborhood,
Yeah.
every house
Yeah.
that's on,
You know where the flooding occurs,
Yeah,
basically? in the
exactly.
High water
basements.
table, yeah.
yeah,
Absolutely.
and everybody's got a sub pump.
Mhm.
Most of them pump them out the house onto the lawn or something, but I'm sure as you go through this, people who over time said, oh, I can just put it in my drain, so it's not going on my lawn and making a wet spot, and ruining my grass.
And ideally, we'd like them to pump it to the storm drain because we don't have combined sewer storm flow. And also the storm drain and the lawn keeps it in the community, into the water table.
Yeah.
Whereas you pump it into the sewer, it goes to Lowell, into the river. So anyway, we're going to try to see what we can do. So again, it's a very interesting data point. And then related to that, the next item was the sewer bank options. Paul Haverty's here. I did have a discussion with Paul and Christine Clancy, our Public Works Director, regarding the possible establishment of a sewer bank to allow for a reallocation of sewer capacity. What we're seeking to find, and we don't have a DPW, which is not all that alarming, given that the DPW didn't run the sewer construction project, but we're looking for the DEP consent order back in the 1980 period that directed the town to install sewage in portions of the town, where it's now seeking it from DEP because we believe they would have it in their repository, because that may have binding constraints in terms of what the town may be able to do with sewage in the community. We just want to make sure we're not running afoul of any consent order. We also have not been able to...
Can you back
Go
up?
ahead. Sure.
We were given a consent order because why?
To sewer the
Was there
town.
a violation?
Because of Clean Water Act. Yeah.
Okay.
There were portions of Chelmsford that were ordered to be sewered because of water quality issues and septic issues. Those tend to be your densely populated areas, your vinyl squares, your town center and so forth, because if you had outbreaks of sewer systems. So we are looking for that order from the 1980 era, just to make sure we're not running afoul of anything with the Environmental Regulatory Agency. Because again, we just want to make sure that there isn't anything in that order that may present a problem today. Because usually those orders go into effect, they're not lifted, they become binding.
Okay.
coming back to the current terms, we've not been able to identify another community in Massachusetts that establishes a system to reallocate sewer capacity among properties in a community. Attorney Haverty provided, and I provided in your packet, a copy of the DEP consent order for the Lancaster Sewer District. And then, under this scenario, where it was a multi-town district, the district was authorized to perform inflow and infiltration removal activities to introduce new flows into the system, and they had a credit system. So for every 2 gallons of infiltration that they removed, they were allowed 1 unit of inflow into the system. So again, we see evidence of a credit system, not that we're under a consent order, but at least it gives the parameters of how a system may work. So if you apply that to what we're doing now about allocating across properties, if we're at a sewer capacity constraint, then if you're having a system that you're doing 2 of those, you're allowing the allocation, but also reducing the overall inflow by a ratio system, perhaps 1 to 2 at a minimum, meaning that it could be greater in other scenarios. But we're looking at that. We're also looking, when the system is developed, is would that additional flow only be allowed to be used in certain areas of the town, 129 corridor, the town center, Vinyl Square. In other words, might such allocation only be allowed in certain areas of the town, as opposed to an area that may not be seen as the critical areas for economic development in the community. And then also we have to be mindful of this, as we talked in the past, the sewer main infrastructure, was discussed earlier tonight, that are there enough capacity in the sewer mains to handle a reallocation within the community under our current flow system? And we've recognized that this may involve deed restrictions to, formally recognize and record and document if a property were to allocate or relieve itself of sewer capacity. So again, those are our initial discussions. We're going to get together, before, in the next couple of weeks to further refine this. And I think our goal is to have something next month of an outline of a system that may be tenable. Again, we're being open-minded. We're just not we just at this point don't have all the evidence that we need in terms of our own consent order, and also what may be economically feasible. I don't know if there's anything else, Paul. And Paul's here. You can jump in.
Certainly. Thank you again, Paul Haverty, Town Council. I think the town manager has done a good job sort of recapping the discussion we had. One thing I would point out with regards to the allocation from existing properties to potential new sewer connections that is going to be difficult to put into place is the fact that we are going to have to put a deed restriction on any property that voluntarily gives up its right to additional flow in return for payment from another property that would then use that flow, because that is going to have an impact on the value of the property that's having the deed restriction placed upon them. So I'm not sure that the cost to actually acquire that flow is going to be set, to be able to really do that at a level that makes it worthwhile for the property owner to give up that potential flow, because that's going to negatively impact their property value. So, I think it's a good idea in theory, but in practice, I'm not so sure how successful it's going to be. We did also have a discussion regarding potential to enter into an intermunicipal agreement with Lowell for the removal of I&I in Lowell rather than in Chelmsford. And in theory, that could work similar to the Lancaster administrative consent order that I provided, which allows for removal either in Lancaster or in Clinton. The situation, and the reason I was familiar with that particular administrative consent order was because I've done some work in Lancaster, and they basically are in a similar situation as Chelmsford, in that they really don't have very much I&I that they're able to remove from their system. Meanwhile, Clinton had a great deal of I&I that could be removed from their system. Well, their administrative consent order allows the I&I to be removed from either town, and you'd be able to get that credit. Obviously, the town where the INI is going to be removed is going to want something in return for that. So if you did something along the lines of a 3-to-1 removal requirement, where the person that is going to conduct the work gets credit for 1 gallon, Lowell would get credit for 1 gallon, and Chelmsford would get credit for 1 gallon. And it's sort of a win-win for all 3 towns. But obviously, it's going to require cooperation from the city of Lowell. In order to do that, it's going to require cooperation from their Department of Public Works, their sewer department. So I don't know how realistic of an approach that is, but I think if they would buy into it, I think it's probably something that is more likely to pay benefits than this sort of proposal to swap from existing connections through the deed restriction program. Because again, I do see that as impacting the value of that property more than whatever they would be able to sell that credit for.
So going back to that deed restriction comment you made, it wouldn't be that they'd be giving up part or portions of flow. If they did it that way, the deed restriction was they could never return back to sewer from septic.
One thing I think we need to make clear on that, we never reached any kind of consensus
No.
about that was going to be
No, we just wanted to
an
know if it
option.
was allowable.
But that was one of the topics that we were discussing.
Yeah.
And my understanding was it was like, if you had a use that was changing from a higher flow use to something like a self-storage warehouse or something along
I see what
that
you're
nature,
saying,
that the amount of sewer that new use would require would be greatly diminished. And therefore, the idea was to create some sort of a sewer bank in which they could basically commoditize that additional flow and sell it to some other user. But the problem is, they would need to put a deed restriction on their property saying, we can't return to a flow to a use that requires a greater flow. And that is going to have a negative impact on their property value.
So I guess to that, my question is, so if a business out on 129 who is already attached to sewer, decided to expand, add a septic system to their property,
Well,
and then give up their attachment to sewer?
Adding a septic system or a wastewater treatment facility is a different question.
Well, that's what I'm asking now.
I think that they would probably be more willing to do that. I don't know how willing someone is going to be to actually disconnect from the public sewer system to go to a wastewater treatment facility or a septic system, because there are costs associated with installation and maintenance of both of those. However, if they were to do so, then I certainly don't see how we would have a problem creating a system in which that flow can then be allocated to a specific user.
Well, the reason that came up is that there was a scenario where there was a company that needed to add some septic capacity because they've already at the end of their rope, so to speak, with the sewer.
Yep.
They were going to expand, and what I had said is that something, if they didn't just do it for the expansion, but did it for the whole facility and then gave up their sewer line, because they're already got a shovel in the dirt anyway. Maybe there's some way to incentivize them and then get that capacity back. These were just ideas that were getting thrown around.
We're trying to play every scenario
Yeah.
to get capacity.
That was just residences.
No, this was
Not,
No, this was business.
This was
actually.
business.
well,
That scenario was,
once,
Well, we also had a similar conversation for residents.
yeah.
You know, if a builder could pay a resident to put in a septic system and get them to detach permanently from the sewer system.
Well, again, if it's an existing connection, then you are creating capacity, right? But if it's a new
But
construction.
would that affect the deed or anything
no,
like that?
this
would
is
just-
Well, you would need to have that deed restriction, because if they at some point come in and say, we're a lot that existed prior to the effective date of the sewer moratorium, we're entitled to be connected to the sewer, we want to connect, how would we be able to say no when they don't fall within the sewer moratorium language? But in the meantime, we've already allocated their capacity to another user, so they would have to have that deed restriction as well. Another question is, how long will that deed restriction remain in place? General Laws, Chapter 184 limits restrictions on land to 30 years. There are certain exceptions for restrictions held by a governmental body, but I don't think this would fit within those exceptions. So you're really only looking at a 30-year time frame, in which case, at the end of the 30 years, does that property owner come back and say, I want to connect to the municipal system now?
So we're going to get a further updated report?
Yes.
Okay. And will you look into that if a commercial or residence totally disconnects? I'm going to assume your answer is yes, there needs to be a deed requirement. Do you think that would?
Yes, I think absolutely there would need to be some sort of deed restriction. Otherwise, they can come right back in and try to get their sewer allocation again that they've already, sold off as a commodity.
Okay.
Could I suggest to Paul and the board that we put this on every agenda till we close on it? Just a status check-in, even if the status is we're still working? Because I don't think I think this interchange is really important, and it's the moratorium end is going to come up real soon, so.
Yeah, and if people
I'd
have
rather
other
just look at,
ideas
I'd
for Paul to
rather
look
just have a
into.
dialogue every meeting till we figure out what we're doing. Are you okay with that? Board, Paul? Yeah, okay. Anything else on this topic?
Thank you. Just real quickly, we also received a road safety audit from Mass Department of Transportation. As we discussed back in June, there was a audit of the intersection of Golden Cove, Stedman Street, and 110 as part of what will be the future design for the improvements from Alpine Lane to that intersection. So again, it provides a great overview of what's being analyzed short, medium, and long term. Again, there'll be hearings as we get closer in terms of the design in the next year or so, and this is just, again, a good document we wanted to make people aware of. And some of them, as I said, have happened already. If you go down there, you see the road lines have been remarked, and the crosswalks are working and so forth, so that's done. Next item, real briefly, the installation of the adult fitness court on Chelmsford and Wilson Street, that has been completed. The snow fencing has been removed as of this morning.
I saw somebody there tonight.
They're probably there tonight, exactly. We're waiting to confirm a date with Blue Cross Blue Shield with Gage, a $50,000 grant to that project. We're waiting to hear from them in terms of a date for a formal ribbon cutting ceremony and so forth, but the park is, as you said, is operational, and we're going to get bike racks over there and a few other things, but basically, I just want to commend DPW and Lisa, Christine Clancy, her staff, Lisa Maroney, and others who sort of helped, facilitate this project. And
that was fast.
Yeah, we wanted to get it in before Labor Day, and actually, there was, when we did the bid award, they had a narrow window if we could get all the documents together, and we were scanning documents with Paul Haverty's signature and the bonds and everything else, and it got done appropriately and done nice, so that was great. Next thing I have, real briefly, is I have the first draft of the 2022 fall annual town meeting warrant, which again...
Wait, Paul, you skipped over the...
Oh, I'm sorry, installation. No.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, did you skip over the Stedman Street?
No, I did that. That was a road safety audit.
You just went really quick over it.
We went really quick over it, saying that, the audit's done and...
What's there?
The report's there, and some of the work has already taken place, and there'll probably be a design hearing in a year for the redesign of the highway.
Do we get cued from NIMCOG as these reports come out, or from Pat as our liaison? Because this one we kind of stumbled on because we had a question about a work bridge study that apparently doesn't exist.
They reached out to the DPW, independent of NIMCOG, to come out and be at the site. So we had police chief, fire, DPW, myself. We were all out there as part of the analysis, as part of the MassDOT project. But yeah, sometimes DPW, NIMCOG has something they're very good at giving us a heads up on what's taking place as well. So again, moving on to the fall town meeting warrant. Tonight's the first draft. Next meeting, you'll have the second draft on the 2 weeks from this evening, on the 22nd, and then the meeting after that, which is the Monday after Labor Day, which I think is the 11th. You'll be asked to sign the warrant for fall town meeting. At this point, you can see there's 25 articles. As is customary, the beginning of the warrant is traditional, both at spring and fall. So reports of officers, cemetery improvement fund, the transportation infrastructure fund appropriation, sewer construction stabilization fund, affordable housing stabilization fund, funding for collective bargaining agreements, unpaid bills, amend the current year operating budget. There's a citizen petition to provide funding for the school department for professional support personnel, so I put that in with the financial articles. Article to appropriate additional funds for roadway and sidewalk construction, sewer capital improvements, which really is the whole issues of what we're studying out there. PFAS remediation, where we should have your next meeting a estimate on what it's going to cost to monitor and test the PFAS system through the end of this fiscal year. Transferring free cash to reduce the property tax levy, and then transfer free cash to the general stabilization fund. Then we would go to the community preservation fund. What you see on the list there is the Historical Commission property inventory program and rescinding unexpended appropriations. I will be adding one in next draft for the School Street Freight House that was discussed earlier this evening and was requested of me by the CPC Chair, Linda Prescott. And then you can see that, again, items we discussed this evening, increasing the senior property tax work-off funding. The next one is increasing the property tax exemption for seniors under that Clause 41C. Charter amendment, you recall, regarding the annual audit language.
Is that a two-thirds vote?
For a charter amendment, yes.
Okay. It's not on there.
Plus a town vote. No?
And it's a two-thirds vote, and if it goes back to the ballot, it's a majority vote at the ballot. The next one is removal of the deputy fire chief from civil service. It's the next item, so we can talk about it then, but I have a placeholder. And then there's the 3 citizen petition zoning articles regarding warehouse distribution and the use regulation table. And then the final 2 are land use. One is Oddfellows property Brook Walk easement acceptance, which I think is, it's all been drafted, but now that that project has been completed, it's got to go to town meeting for acceptance of the Brook Walk easement. And then the last one is one we've been working on with council and DPW, is about the Charles Way, the whole issue of the authorization to be able to do the work on the road and then for later acceptance by town meeting. And as you know, we've been talking to Mr. Sheehan, the property owner, who's expressed a willingness to fund a portion of this work, but we also have to have the legal right to get on that. And last I heard from Paul, you haven't heard back from their attorney, Doug, unless you have Doug Hausler, in terms of if anything developing on this, because the goal was, particularly by the property owner, was to have it done this construction season, which it's getting tight.
And I haven't heard anything back since we had the meeting with them.
So
Is still a question mark whether this will make it to fall town meeting?
yeah, so I have it as a placeholder. We'll do what we can and and see if I know that Christine Clancy met with Mr. Sheehan, talked about the cost. He expressed his eagerness to get going on this, but again, we haven't had anything further in terms of the taking ability, in terms of the previous owner.
I have a question, Paul. So Article 10 is to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate funds for roadway and sidewalk construction. And then when we had the recommendations from you earlier this year, I thought that the recommendation was that you wanted to take money potentially from free cash to allocate to the roads. So
yes, that's what this would do.
Oh, okay, because I was just, because there's free cash articles that specifically spell out transferring it from free cash for the tax levy or the general stabilization, but this one would probably be a free cash.
Yeah, I've used the generic language.
So this isn't the regular allocation of $400,000 a year.
No, that's in spring capital.
Yeah, that's capital. Okay.
Yep. And again, my goal is to have that plan and roadway plan in place prior to the town meeting, and have it to you next month. I'm talking to Christine Clancy about that. So, because the next people are going to ask is what roads are being done, where's the money going to go? And so, and we believe we'll have that for you. So again, I'll bring a next draft, the next meeting. And then the next item, and Chief Ryan is still on the call. This is the removal of deputy fire chief position from civil service. Again, this is an introductory discussion, and we're starting here. We haven't discussed this with any fire personnel in person, although I know the chief has sent a notice to the fire personnel, but the issue, let me just pull it up in front of me. The proposal is to, as part of, we've been looking at succession planning efforts, following the goal of the past fiscal year. And in looking at it into the fire department, the request would be to remove the position of deputy fire chief from civil service. And I'm trying to put it into some context, as you can see in the memo. To the best of our knowledge, we can't find any documentation that the Chelmsford fire chief position was ever in the civil service law of the Commonwealth. On the police side of the public safety field, the town meeting voted back in 1993 to remove the police chief from civil service. And that was enacted later by the legislature that year. 10 years later, in 2003, town meeting acted again and to remove the deputy police chief from civil service, and that was enacted in January 4th of 2004. What does this mean in context? In the selection of a deputy police chief or deputy fire chief, in this case, we'd allow the fire chief to have the same authority that the police chief has, which is he could appoint, with the approval of the town manager, the appropriate candidate for the position. The alternative of what if we don't do it, what if we just leave status quo, would be the position would remain in civil service. There'd be a civil service examination with an option for an assessment center. It's not known how many fire department captains would participate in the civil service promotional examination. What we do know is that if 4 don't sign up for the exam, then the exam is opened up to the next lower rank, which is all firefighters. So again, the goal here is to provide parity within the chief officer positions of the police and fire department. All I can say from my experience over the last 15 years, I've seen our Police Chief Murphy and Police Chief Spinney successfully appoint 3 non-civil service deputy police chiefs, those being Chiefs Jim Spinney at the time, Dan Ahern, and most recently Colin Spence. And so, we're feeling is that right and responsibility should be vested also with the fire chief. And Chief Ryan is here, and he can actually give you the real experience in terms of what it means to go to a civil service exam and what the interest has been. I honestly don't know who is signed up or who's interested in being deputy. I'm just doing this in terms of philosophical approach, in terms of succession planning, but I'll ask Chief Ryan to just give you his perspective on this matter.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Just to shed some clarity, some light on this, as a practice, in my 28 years on the fire department, we regularly call for promotional exams on our civil service schedule, which is every 2 years. So it's every 2 years we call for a captain's exam, whether there's an opening or not. And every 2 years we will call for a deputy chief's exam, again, whether there's an opening or not. Recently, we called for a deputy chief exam last year, May 21st, 2022. The application period, the sign-up period opened up March 8th, and it closed on March 29th. We were informed by civil service only 3 captains signed up. I don't have the name of the captains. I don't sign off on their applications, and it's intentionally designed that way. But as a result, we didn't meet the threshold. The threshold for Chelmsford is 4 captains to sign up. Out of the 7 that we have, 4 captains out of 7 to sign up, to have the exam. As a result, the exam wasn't held. It is now going to be automatically held next year, next May. The issue, I guess the concern that I have, is that that exam now opens up to the next lower rank that the manager just talked about. For us, the next lower rank from captains is firefighters. So it opens it up to the whole exam. So as we have done consistently, it is posted online, and we post it in all the fire stations. So that any member who's eligible will be able to sign up, pay, and take the exam. So over the years with succession planning and discussions, we have looked at this issue, we've discussed it, and I think we've taken a harder look over the past probably a couple of weeks. Now that there's discussions that there may be an opening within the next 2 years. So as it stands today, the 3 individuals, if they are still interested next year, will be eligible and can take the exam. But this won't impact them. This will impact a future selection process for deputy chief. And I think that's talking to the manager, looking at what Chief Spinney has and Chief Murphy before him. I think certainly we would want that flexibility to bring a larger slate of candidates forward to be considered. Thank you.
Is it only, when we get to a point where, let's just assume we're doing it through the civil service process, is our selection only based on captains from Chelmsford who take, let's assume you've got 4 or more, is it based only on captains from Chelmsford who take that exam, or is it a pool of captains in the civil service across the state?
It goes by municipality, so we have to post it. It's posted on the website. It's posted internally in all stations. So for us, the civil service department, it would just pertain to the officers within the Chelmsford Fire Department.
And what about next year, when you have to open it up? Is that still just Chelmsford?
Correct.
You still can take out of the top 3. You can take anybody out of the top 3, right?
Chief, in
In
terms of,
theory, yes, but the burden falls on me. And what I mean by that is, if anytime if I bypass a candidate, whether it's a entry-level firefighter, somebody we're looking at, or if it's somebody for the process, yes, I can bypass them with cause. I have to present them the cause in writing, and they certainly have the ability to challenge it. So in this example, if a firefighter tops the exam, the burden would fall on me, the town, to show cause why we are bypassing.
and that can be appealed, is what the chief is noting.
Correct, yes.
But it could be more than just the examination. It could be an assessment center also, correct? That they would have
Yes,
to
civil
also.
service does offer that option, but you have to sign on early and get approved for it.
Pat, I don't understand your question.
It's not just an exam, it's also an assessment center in addition to the exam. And then
Right.
that gets scored by civil service. And what that was Pat's point is it wasn't just taking an exam, it's the exam and the assessment center get combined into an overall ranking.
Right, and typically I would expect the captains to be more knowledgeable, I
big
guess,
advantage.
as far as an assessment center.
Right,
We're in that position. Right?
right.
We got a letter, so we're not doing anything tonight, right?
No, we're not asking anything
So-
tonight. Again, this is, we had to start somewhere, and the last thing I was gonna do is then, if I go start and reach out to the union, and say, well, wait, the selectmen board doesn't know anything about this, and so it's kinda like, we're starting with you, the chief provided me, he sent a copy to the membership today, informing them of this action, and I know
So-
in the letter you have, they're away, and I'm sure when they come back, there'll be dialogue.
Well, they've asked to be able to come, in that
Sure.
letter, to come speak to this body, so I think we should go
course.
ahead and put them on an agenda and hear from them. When you're talking about parity and apples to apples, the other thing I would be interested in is what percentage of municipalities in the state have their deputy fire chief as a civil service or not.
So if I could answer that?
Go ahead, Gary.
Yes, okay, thank you. I did reach out to civil service with that. They would only provide how many fire chiefs are in civil service. It's about 50. And that information is on their website, the number of communities that appoint their fire chief.
I'm sorry, Chief,
I did that.
Chief, you cut out, it's about 50 chiefs that are
About
in
50
civil
fire
service?
chiefs.
Okay.
I asked for how many deputy chiefs are currently appointed through civil service, and they have not provided that information. So I have reached out to the Fire Chiefs Association for that information, and I've gotten probably about a dozen responses, some civil service. It appears the practice is to appoint the deputy chief through either an assessment center or some sort of panel. And I've been part of panels, whether it's for a lieutenant, captain, for area fire chief. That is my experience, and it seems to be the feedback that I have received up to today. But again, I just sent that information out last week.
Our chief is not a civil service. right?
No.
Right.
Thank you.
Is there any other information that people would like on this at this time, or?
So the argument, or one of them, the pros, is that it would make it in parity with the police, right? So if we're looking at making positions in parity, and we can put this on for another discussion, but why does the chief of police have a contract but the fire chief doesn't?
Because the statute provided that when the town took it out of civil service, required him to have a contract.
Okay.
And again, there is no similar statute or act, special act that provides anything.
But do we want to fix that at the same time?
Guess you could, but yeah, you don't need an act of the legislature to do that. You can do that by town bylaw.
Can we get data on that as well?
Yeah, we'll get to that, yeah. And police one. But I think the other key difference is, right, as it stands today, the police chief has a command staff of a deputy chief, and then lieutenants. Right now, the chief has, himself and one deputy, and then the rest are captains and firefighters. So again, we're just looking organizational, and the question becomes is, should he have that same ability to choose his deputy?
Right.
But he would not be required to take one of the captains, right, to promote him to deputy chief if we take this out of civil service, is that correct?
Yes, technically no.
Yeah, right, I understand, yeah.
Yeah, technically no, but
Right, you would expect.
well, the same as the police chief doesn't either.
Exactly,
He could appoint a patrol officer deputy chief if the manager were to approve it.
Would you, if it were out of civil service, would you still be required to select from Chelmsford, the Chelmsford pipeline? Or could you bring from outside?
I think that was a question I was asked.
Well, if it's not in civil service, theoretically, no. I mean, Chief Murphy or Chief Spinney could have came to me and said, hey, I want to appoint, Captain America from, Tewksbury to be the next deputy police chief in Chelmsford. Theoretically, it could happen, but in real world, it doesn't happen.
So the difference was simply that they didn't have to go through the civil service exams and assessments?
Right, yeah, just like the chief doesn't. Neither police chief or fire chief or the deputy police chief, it's not civil service. There's no examination, there's no, it's not through the civil service.
Required examination.
Yeah, there's no required examination, exactly. Now, we've done assessment centers, when Chief Spinney was selected, it was an assessment center. When Chief Murphy was, I believe, Manager Lynch chose Chief Murphy as chief, there was no assessment center. When Chief Curran retired, I interviewed Chief Deputy Ryan and Deputy Donahue and made the difficult decision to go with, it was a difficult decision.
They have to retire at 65, right?
Yeah, mandatory retirement at 65, yeah.
Gary's got 2 years left.
Exactly.
Any other comments or questions? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Good night, Chief.
So we have appointments next, Paul?
Yeah, you have, for Select Board appointments, the Clean Energy and Sustainability Committee of Brendan Marshall for a 3-year term expiring June 30th, 2025.
Any questions? The only thing I observed is on the list on the town meeting, or the town website for boards and committees, it looks like there's 2 vacancies on this committee, so it should probably still be on our open.
If we've done another one recently, I know it's not current.
Oh, so that might not be updated yet?
Correct.
Okay. So maybe we're all set. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to appoint Brendan Marshall to the Clean Energy Sustainability Committee to a 3-year term expiring August 30th, 2025.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0.
Thank you. And then I have an appointment for the Vinyl Square Strategic Action Plan Committee I'm seeking your confirmation of the appointment of Joan Walters for a one-year term expiring June 30th, 2023. She sort of serves as the business representative to that committee. Virginia was on the call. The committee recommended her she stepped forward, and they endorsed her, and I had her fill out a form, and she's very anxious to get, officially serve in this capacity. So I'd seek your
We don't need to
confirmation.
officially correct her form, right?
No.
As long as the motion's right.
All right, I will make a motion to appoint Joan Walters to the Vinyl Square Strategic Action Plan Committee for a one-year term expiring June 30th, 2023.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0. Next up, we have meeting minutes. We'll take July 25th first. Are there any amendments before we take a motion?
I just had, it's not really any typo amendment, but more a process amendment or a question. Normally in the past, when someone asks something to be read into the record, it's attached as a supporting document, not kind of, what's the word, paraphrased. So I'm wondering if we should attach Paul's statement and not paraphrase it into the minutes.
A lot of times, both are done.
I had made a similar comment because the initial draft minutes had the whole thing in there, and normally, I don't know any board or committee that puts in the whole statement, so I think what I had suggested kind of got missed in the translation was just to make a statement that Paul read a statement into the record requesting that, certain aspects of his review be looked at, and then you attach the statement at the end, and I saw what that turned into was a translation of prose on every paragraph, which, at minimum, the statement should be attached in the supporting documents. Is that what you're saying?
It's not listed on supporting documents, so it should be either way, I think. It should be either way. It should be listed on supporting documents. But as far as the other thing,
Do we want to make the,
I'm okay either way, because I've seen where, a lot of times the PowerPoint is pretty much word for word repeated in the minutes too, so.
I just think that statement should be attached
okay.
so that someone can read it.
So just the amendment that the statement be attached? I'm fine with that. Want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the regular meeting minutes for the select board meeting dated July 25th, 2022 as amended.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0. And next up, we have August 1st.
The work session.
Yeah, I have an amendment to my minutes, but item 3, it says board members. It should say board.
Oh, board members.
Well, I've been accused of a lot of things.
The wild boars. Anything
I
else?
think it's appropriate.
Thanks.
Okay, I'll take a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the work session meeting minutes from August 1st, 2022 as amended.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I have an announcement on determination of releasability of executive session minutes. The minutes from July 25th, 2022, segment 2 have been released, and the minutes from July 25th, 2022, segment 1 were held and not released. Next up, we have select board liaison reports. Mark?
No, all set.
George?
I'm set.
The school committee would like folks to know that at their last meeting, they began the middle school reconfiguration for the 2023-2024 school year, and also approved updates for the student and employee handbooks. The planning board public hearings on August 10th will include the garage construction at 150 to 152 Dalton Road, the warehouse construction at 270 Billrica Road, and the multifamily development at 255 Princeton Street. And the North Chelmsford Water District would just like to remind everyone that with the water ban at level 3, everyone needs to just do their part to conserve water and abide by the restrictions, and I'm sure that goes for all the water departments. Ken, I'm sorry.
I did, but it was already talked about, so we're good.
Okay. Pat?
I have none.
Okay.
How about that?
Wow, holy,
Never happened.
it's your first time, right?
I went out of order.
That was it.
That was it. I went out of order. Okay. It is 9:44 p.m. I will gladly take a motion.
I will make a motion to adjourn into executive session to discuss strategy with respect to litigation regarding Ledge Road commercial trucking and strategy with respects to litigation regarding North Chelmsford Water District PFAS contamination, not to return to open session.
Second.
Roll call, Mark?
Aye.
George? Ken?
Aye.
Pat?
Aye.
And I vote aye.